Chapter 220. His voice was loud and clear. The moment the name Pillar of the State General was announced, it immediately produced a miraculous effect. The clamoring crowd immediately quietened down. Shwa! Everyone turned their heads to look in one direction. Becoming the center of attention, Xueqi was momentarily stunned. He never expected Yu Qianqiu to make such a move. At the entrance of the 1,000-flower brothel, the military officer holding the saber by his waist looked over in shock. Yu Qianqiu, who was dressed as a house servant, was naturally unable to attract his attention. Seeing Xueqi in his luxurious robes, he was a little shocked. As the third young master of the Pillar of the State General's residence, although Xueqi rarely appeared in public, he had still seen him on a few occasions. As a soldier, the Pillar of the State General who had been fighting at the western borders for many years was undoubtedly the idol of the entire Xueqi Empire. He also had a very high prestige among the citizens of the empire. Especially last year, when the general's 2 million soldiers split into 6 groups and defeated the 6 countries, forcing the 6 countries to sign an armistice, it pushed the reputation of the Pillar of the State General to the peak. In their hearts, the Pillar of the State General was the guardian of the Xueqi Empire. Out of the way! The military officer shouted excitedly. The citizens also had a look of surprise on their faces as they squeezed to the side, afraid to block Xueqi's path. The military officer waved his hand, and the soldiers guarding the 1,000-flower brothel immediately split into 2 groups, rushing into the path that the citizens had vacated. They lined up neatly on both sides of the path. The military officer strode towards Xueqi and waved his hand to open his cloak. Holding the saber in his hand, he knelt down on one knee and said in a clear voice, "This general is the City Guard Patrol Commander Yuan Fei. Greetings, third young master." Greetings, third young master. The 2 rows of guards and the guards of the 1,000-flower brothel all knelt down in unison. It was unknown which citizen knelt down first, but the citizens of the entire street all knelt down with difficulty. Because it was simply too crowded, they all shouted, "This humble citizen greets third young master. This humble citizen greets third young master." Their shouts rang out one after another, and it was clear that they were all heartfelt respect. Xueqi was a little embarrassed. Coming to a brothel in the name of the National Pillar General's residence was not something to be proud of. Yu Qianqiu was dumbfounded. He didn't expect the Pillar of the State General to have such high prestige among the soldiers and citizens. He couldn't help but feel regret for his actions earlier. To have caused the citizens to love the Pillar of the State General in such a manner. His conscience really couldn't be justified. After all, he was a soldier in his previous life. To be able to command such respect from the citizens, it was impossible to do so without experiencing 1,000 miles of bloodshed. Yu Qianqiu was truly ashamed to have tarnished the reputation of a general like this. The nobles and the rich who had entered the 10,000-flower house were also shocked by the continuous shouts outside. Third young master? Which family's third young master had come to cause such a big commotion? They sent their servants to the door to inquire. All the soldiers and civilians on the street knelt down. Only the 2 young men dressed as a master and a servant stood out, making the servants speechless. At this moment, Xueqi couldn't help but roll his eyes at Yu Qianqiu with a little complaint. The latter smiled awkwardly. Xueqi circulated his true yuan and said loudly, "My fellow citizens, please get up. I, Xueqi, am not worthy of such a big greeting." His voice surged through the entire street, drowning out everyone's greetings. The soldiers and commoners were shocked. What a loud voice! As expected of the son of the National Pillar General. Like father like son. Everyone thanked him and said, "Thank you, third young master." They got up with difficulty. "Commander Yuan, please get up." Xueqi reached out to help Yuan Fei up. When the latter heard the former's loud voice and saw him coming to help him up, his competitive spirit was secretly aroused. He wanted to see if he had real skills or was just using his voice to scare people. Who knew that he didn't even have the strength to resist and was lifted up just like that. Yuan Fei couldn't help but be shocked. What great strength! His gaze swept past the sword hanging on Xueqi's waist. No wonder he was brought up in such a manner. Seeing their commander stand up, the soldiers also stood up. Yuan Fei waved his hand and said, "Third young master, please." "You're welcome." Xueqi cupped his hands and walked forward under Yuan Fei's lead. Yu Qianqiu followed behind dejectedly. Stepping into the myriad flower house, Yuan Fei stayed outside to continue guarding while the pimp led the master and servant in. The lanterns were lit and the myriad flower house was filled with guests. Alluring women were walking around with plates of fruits, wine and all kinds of delicacies. Hearing that the third young master of the National Pillar General's residence had arrived, the nobles who were already seated gathered downstairs to greet him. In terms of status and rank, there was no need to greet him. Many of the nobles had a higher rank than the National Pillar General. However, he was the one who held the strongest military power in the empire. He was someone who could make the entire Huaxia Empire tremble with a stomp of his foot. He was much stronger than those nobles who only had titles in name only. Xueqi gracefully greeted the crowd. One moment it was that little prince, the next moment it was this little prince. Xueqi handled the situation with ease. Yu Qianqiu nodded to himself. As expected of someone from the upper class. Today, he had finally witnessed the power of the National Pillar General's residence. He had a new plan in mind. They were in an enclosure, with a big performance stage in the middle. There were 2 levels of seats for spectators. The upper level was an open single room, while the lower level was a circle of single-table banquets. This should be the place where the courtesan Belle would sing and dance tonight to celebrate peace and prosperity. Xueqi arrived late. The single room upstairs had already been occupied. However, there was no need to worry. Naturally, there were people who knew their place and left one for him. The 2 of them were in a single room on the 2nd floor, one sitting and one standing. The one standing behind Xueqi was, of course, Yu Qianqiu. A servant couldn't possibly sit with his master in public, could he? Wanhua Lu had arranged for some prostitutes to come over. However, Yu Qianqiu felt that they were too unattractive. He found an excuse that the third young master didn't want to be disturbed and chased them out. He was used to seeing beauties in the cultivation world. Naturally, he wasn't interested in the so-called beauties here. If it wasn't for the fact that he still wanted to see the courtesan that everyone was fighting for, he might have turned around and left. Soon, the performance on the central stage began. For a moment, the sound of zither, flute, and drums rang out. More than a dozen graceful women danced gracefully, causing the crowd to cheer. Yu Qianqiu originally thought that they were going to do a striptease or something. Who knew that after wandering around for a long time, there wasn't anything interesting at all. One group after another went down, and another group changed into different styles. They didn't have the awareness of a brothel at all. He really didn't understand why those princes and nobles were cheering. Yu Qianqiu wished that he could throw a grenade down and let those women who were baring their fangs and brandishing their claws quickly get off the stage. He wanted that courtesan to come up and take a look as soon as possible. If she didn't look good, then they should leave as soon as possible to avoid wasting time. This brothel was too boring. The music played by those musicians didn't have any passion at all. When it fell into his ears, it was like a lullaby. It made him sleepy and yawn repeatedly. After an unknown amount of time, just as he was in a semi-conscious state, the commotion around him woke him up. The lonely and light sound of the zither entered his ears, and it was quite refreshing. When he looked again, the surrounding princes and nobles were all leaning against the railings to watch. "The courtesan is coming out," Xueqi said softly. He also walked to the railings to watch. Yu Qianqiu's eyes lit up. He had been waiting for the stars and the moon. Finally it was here. He also followed. In the depths of the lanterns, a figure dressed in a light gauze and thin red palace dress leisurely walked over. A long white jade hairpin was inserted into her jet-black hair bun. The 2 ends of the hairpin were pulled up by a red veil that covered her face. Her pretty face was faintly discernible. It was hard to see clearly, but it was exceptionally alluring. Her white and tender lily-white hands were hugging a plain zither. One side of her ample chest was lightly pressed against it, making the other side even more abruptly perky. The red veil covered her perky buttocks, trying to cover her slender jade legs. However, the boundless spring scenery was always inadvertently revealed when her jade legs strode forward. The beauty dressed in red lightly walked onto the stage. She put down the jade zither on the table that had already been set up by someone. She nodded slightly to the surrounding people and then sat down peacefully. The red veil on both sides of her buttocks was quietly pulled open, revealing her white and tender thighs. "Good!" Someone clapped and shouted. Immediately, it caused a loud commotion. Everyone agreed one after another. Yu Qianqiu finally became spirited. He clapped with all his might. Damn it! He finally saw someone who was pleasing to the eye. Although he couldn't see her face clearly, just based on her figure alone, it was already top-notch. The single room for the two of them was in a good position. The courtesan happened to be facing the two of them, so they could slowly admire her. 10 jade-like fingers pressed down on the strings of the zither, gently evoking a quiet and exquisite sound. The surroundings immediately quietened down. Yu Qianqiu nodded. At first, he sounded a little sad, but it was still a little interesting. At least he was able to continue listening. The sound of the zither reverberated faintly. The face under the red veil suddenly sang softly. I am a fox that has cultivated for 1,000 years. 1,000 years of cultivation, 1,000 years of loneliness. Ah! The smile on Yu Qianqiu's face instantly froze. Then it started to twitch. Chapter 221. It was a completely different tune from the Huaxiar Empire, with a different style and singing style. However, it was undeniable that it was indeed pleasant to the ears. It was completely different from the current high-pitched tunes that were popular. It was simple and mellow, yet moving. Even those ignorant and incompetent hedonistic sons could immediately understand the meaning behind it. Gradually, the image of a white fox trapped in love for 1,000 years appeared in everyone's mind. White fox. Xueqi's face was also filled with shock. How did this popular tune in the cultivation world spread to the myriad flower house in the secular world? Moreover, the person who composed this tune was right beside him. The two of them looked at each other, completely losing the mood to look at beauties. They looked at the Xueqi again. Although they couldn't be sure, they had a feeling that the other party was sizing them up intentionally or unintentionally. This Xueqi was probably not simple. The surrounding nobles had previously been drooling over the Xueqi's beauty, but now they were completely immersed in the Xueqi's singing. Even after the song ended, they still couldn't extricate themselves. After a long time, their exclamations turned into cheers. They all felt that this trip was not in vain, so they rewarded the Xueqi with gold and silver ingots. However, the Xueqi seemed to be indifferent to the praises and rewards of the crowd. Yu Qianqiu and Xueqi were no longer in the mood to stay. They turned around and were about to leave quietly. Suddenly, a coquettish voice transmitted into Yu Qianqiu's ears. I didn't expect that the abandoned disciple of Fuxian Island that the entire Cultivation Alliance is looking for would actually be involved with the pillar of the state generals. Yu Qianqiu stopped in his tracks and suddenly turned to look at the Xueqi downstairs. Who else could it be if not her who was able to sing the white fox? The other party could actually transmit a voice. It was clear that her cultivation was above the tribulation stage. No wonder he couldn't tell. Who was this person? Unfortunately, his cultivation was not at the stage where he could transmit a voice. He couldn't question her in public, could he? He could only reveal a stern and questioning gaze. Seeing his reaction, Xueqi also stopped. He didn't know what he was going to do. Yo! The third son of the National Pillar General was actually an early-stage foundation establishment cultivator. Hee. Yu Qianqiu, you've really found a good hiding place. Yu Qianqiu heard Xueqi's laughter again. Don't look at me like that. You want to know who I am? Then let's meet at the top of the highest mountain in the western suburbs of the capital. Come quickly. Otherwise, I can't guarantee that the Cultivation Alliance won't find out about the relationship between you and the National Pillar General's residence. Hee. After Xueqi finished transmitting her voice, she picked up her zither and quietly walked away amidst the cries of pain from the crowd. She only left the crowd with a graceful and extremely alluring back view. Many people beat their chests and stamped their feet, asking everywhere why the Oiran Queen left after just one song. No one could answer. Those who wanted to use force were also stopped by others. Since Myriad Flower Tower was able to establish itself in the Huaxiar Empire, they naturally had a powerful background or strength to back them up. They weren't people they could afford to offend just because they wanted to. Yu Qianqiu squinted his eyes as he watched Xueqi leave. He whispered into Xueqi's ear, I have something to attend to. I'll be heading out first. You play by yourself. With that, he left quietly. Xueqi looked at the departing Xueqi, then at the departing Yu Qianqiu. He sat down thoughtfully. After leaving Myriad Flower Tower, Yu Qianchou found an empty alley and released a flying sword out of thin air. He stepped on the sword and quickly flew towards the western suburbs. The people of the capital naturally couldn't see it in the dark. Even if they did see a stream of light, they would think it was a dazzling light. The highest mountain in the western suburbs was steep. It should be a place with few people. On the mountain, the chirping of insects could be heard. The silver moonlight covered the mountain peak. The rocks on the mountain peak were exposed and could be considered flat. As the mountain wind blew, a few old pine trees swayed under the moonlight. Yu Qianchou landed on his sword. He flipped the sword in his hand and carefully looked around. Even if the other party was an expert at the end of the tribulation stage, he was confident that he could escape. It wasn't a big place. Under the moonlight, it was clear that the other party hadn't arrived yet. The terrain at the foot of the mountain was dangerous. In the depths of the forest, it seemed a little eerie. Yu Qianchou looked at the dim lights of the capital. He stood on the mountain peak and welcomed the mountain wind. He held his sword with both hands and quietly waited for the arrival of myriad flower towers Xueqi. Ding ding dong dong. The sound of a zither suddenly sounded behind him. Yu Qianchou was shocked. He suddenly turned around and his gaze fell on the few old pine trees. A woman wrapped in a red veil sat on the top of the tree and played the zither. Who else could it be other than that Xueqi? Damn it! Trying to scare me. Aren't you afraid of pricking your butt while wearing so little? Yu Qianchou said in a deep voice. Who are you? Why did you ask me to come here? How do you know me? Xueqi didn't answer. Instead, she played the zither and sang. Yesterday was like the flowing river in the east, far away from me. Today, my heart is in chaos, how troublesome. Did you ask me to come here just to listen to you play and sing? Yu Qianchou waved his sword and pointed at her. Xueqi was completely focused. It was as if she was deeply immersed in her own song. Only when the song was finished did she open her fingers and press on the zither to stop the lingering sound. She sighed and said, Yu Qianchou, I heard that the song I played and sang today was composed by you? Crazy. Yu Qianchou said in a deep voice. So what if I composed it? So what if I didn't? Nothing much. On the treetop, Xueqi's figure flashed, and under the moonlight, he suddenly appeared beside Yu Qianchou, leaving behind several afterimages. The latter was startled, and he fiercely jumped back. Whoosh! Nearly 100 flying swords suddenly appeared, and they protected him from all directions. Xueqi, who was holding the zither, was startled. She didn't see how Yu Qianchou could produce so many flying swords at once. She also didn't see him carrying a storage bag. She chuckled and said, What are you nervous about? But you do have some skills. No wonder you could kill the sect master of Quangcang. I'm a little curious. How could that half-baked Hao Wu-wei teach a disciple like you? That's right, he might have learned it on supporting Immortal Island. But Hao Wu-wei doesn't know how to play the zither or sing. What do you mean by good or bad? I don't know him. Who are you? Why did you ask me to come here? Yu Qianchou said in a deep voice. You don't know Hao Wu-wei? Hee, I get it. You should know the Hao Sansi of Quangcang, right? Isn't he your master? Xueqi laughed. What does my master have to do with you? Xueqi smiled and said, I heard that you offended the sect master of Quangcang because of your master's death. That's why you joined supporting Immortal Island. Yes. You beat up the grandson of the sect master of Quangcang in the 100 Flowers Valley. Then, you beat up the son of the Deluo sect master at Hatter Island. Then, you killed Lu Chongqing and his grandson. It looks like you're still brooding over the death of your master. Hao Sansi. Sigh. I didn't expect Hao Sansi to have taken in a good disciple. He's always thinking about avenging his master. It's only right for a disciple to avenge his master. There's no need for you to flatter him. I find it strange. You didn't invite me here to have a heart-to-heart talk, did you? Yu Qianchou sneered. Only right? Hee. Hao Sansi has finally done something right in this life, so his death isn't unjust. Xueqi giggled again, laughing so hard that his body trembled. Xueqi, who was in her arms, stood on the ground. She lifted an arm and removed the veil that was tied to her hairpin. Her charming face smiled at Yu Qianchou. So familiar. Yu Qianchou was stunned. He searched his mind and suddenly remembered a person. He couldn't help but exclaim, "You're the 100 Charms Enchantress of the Demon Illusion Palace?" Chapter 222. Oh, little brother, you have a good memory. I didn't expect you to remember our first meeting. It's not in vain that I've been paying attention to you all these years. Haha. Allure Seductress spread her arms and swept her fingers over the strings of the zither. After a string of homophonic notes, she covered her mouth and laughed. Her breasts rippled, and the red muslin wrapped around her swayed with a mountain wind. The color of her lower body was faintly discernible. She was really charming when she smiled. Yu Qianqiu was stunned and thought, "Amazing!" Among all the beauties he knew, he had never seen a woman like Allure Seductress. She had the charm of a mature woman to the extreme. No wonder she was called Allure Seductress. However, he didn't know whether she was a friend or a foe, so he couldn't be careless. He took a deep breath to calm himself down and said expressionlessly, "Why have you been paying attention to me?" Allure Seductress stopped laughing and shook her head. "Are you really confused or just pretending? Don't you know the relationship between me and your master?" Yu Qianqiu's eyes flickered. He had heard the conversation between her and Lu Wanwan in the Spirit Stone Mine. If Hao Wuwei was really his master, Hao Sansi, then the relationship between her and his master was ambiguous. He might even have to call her his master's wife. However, it seemed too ridiculous. How could a dirty old man like his master pick up such an arrogant girl? Besides, Allure Seductress was the master of the Enchanted Palace. Unless she was a pervert. Allure Seductress seemed to have seen through his mind. She didn't wait for his answer and told him a story of the past. At that time, Allure Seductress wasn't the master of the Enchanted Palace yet. When she went down the mountain to gain experience, she happened to meet Hao Wuwei, who was also going down the mountain to gain experience. At that time, he wasn't called Hao Sansi. One was righteous and the other evil, so they started to fight. However, Hao Wuwei was only in the early stage of core formation at that time, while Allure Seductress was in the middle stage of nascent soul. There was a huge gap between their cultivations. As a result, Allure Seductress was not only injured but also captured by Hao Wuwei. The Allure Temptress had always looked down on the hypocrisy of the righteous, so she teased Hao Wuwei by saying that she wouldn't kill him as long as he was willing to join her Phantom Palace. However, Hao Wuwei would rather die than submit. Every time he opened his mouth, he would call her Demoness. As a result, he had angered the Temptress of 100 Charms. Thus, she tormented him until he was on the verge of death. But even if he was on his last breath, Hao Wuwei would rather die than submit. He continued to curse and swear loudly. Allure Seductress was shocked. She didn't expect that there would be a man who wasn't afraid of death in this world. She had never seen a man like this before. Her attitude gradually changed from disdain to ridicule, then to anger, and then from shock to admiration. Such a man was indeed rare in the cultivation world, and it could be said that she was convinced. Then, a dramatic change occurred. Allure Seductress beat Hao Wuwei to death, but in the end, she was the one who healed him. Under her careful care, Hao Wuwei's mood also changed during the healing process. He didn't expect that this seemingly seductive and absurd woman had such a side to her. As a result, there was a problem. When a man and a woman spent a long time together, once they had a good impression of each other, it couldn't be stopped and the two of them developed feelings for each other. To be exact, the two of them fell in love. In the cultivation world, it was absolutely forbidden for righteous and evil to fall in love with each other, especially in the righteous. Hao Wuwei, who had recovered from his injuries, returned to Ong Guangceng uneasily. He didn't dare to mention this matter to his master. However, Allure Seductress was a woman who dared to love and hate. This might be the difference between evil and righteous. Allure Seductress couldn't bear the pain of lovesickness, so she secretly went to Ong Guangceng to find Hao Wuwei. As a result, Hao Wuwei was scared to death and advised her not to come to Ong Guangceng anymore. His words almost made Allure Seductress die of anger. "I'm not afraid. What are you afraid of? A man who isn't even afraid of death is afraid of this?" She was so angry that she simply revealed her whereabouts in Ong Guangceng and quickly escaped. Her willfulness didn't cause any trouble for herself, but it caused Hao Wuwei to suffer. When the matter was exposed and he was reprimanded by the sect, Hao Wuwei honestly confessed what had happened and almost lost his life. If it weren't for the fact that his master happened to be the sect master of Ong Guangceng and wanted to protect him, there wouldn't be House Sansi in the future. In fact, back then, the sect master of Ong Kwang-tsung thought very highly of this disciple and even wanted to train him to be his successor. However, this matter was completely ruined. The sect master was heartbroken and reprimanded his disciple severely. He also changed his name to House Sansi, which meant that he should think twice before doing anything. In the end, he couldn't avoid the punishment and swore never to have any contact with Allure Seductress again. He even made a fuss and faced the wall to reflect on his mistakes for 10 years. After that, Allure Seductress was a little regretful, but she held on. In the end, the two of them really didn't see each other for decades. By coincidence, when the two of them met again, Allure Seductress couldn't believe her eyes. Hao Wu-wei, who was upright and outspoken in the past, had actually become a sloppy old man. She found an opportunity to stop him alone and interrogate him. However, he said that his name was Hao Sansi and that he didn't know Allure Seductress or Hao Wu-wei. She mistook him for someone else. After that, he smiled amiably and left. That's right, Allure Seductress cultivated a kind of seduction technique which had the effect of retaining one's youth. However, with Hao Wu-wei's cultivation, he shouldn't have aged so quickly and become so much older than her. Even if he did age quickly, how could it be so easy for two people who had been in love for so many years to mistake each other? Both of them weren't ordinary people. Moreover, how could she hide the inexplicable sadness that flashed through Hao Wu-wei's smiling eyes? After she spent a lot of effort to figure out what had happened to Hao Wu-wei, Allure Seductress cried bitterly for 3 days and 3 nights. She brought all the misfortune to Hao Wu-wei. After that, she begged Ong Kwang-tsung several times, wanting to meet Hao Wu-wei. However, how could Ong Kwang-tsung agree to her request of a demon? It was already good enough that he didn't kill her. Therefore, she tried to force her way in several times. But how could Allure Seductress break in alone? She almost lost her life in Ong Kwang-tsung's hands. After understanding that one person's strength was too insignificant for Ong Kwang-tsung, Allure Seductress made up her mind and concentrated on her cultivation. After another decade, she sat on the position of the palace master of the enchanted palace as she wished. When she finally firmly grasped the entire enchanted palace in her hands and was about to visit Ong Kwang-tsung again, she didn't expect that Hao Wu-wei would be killed. Allure Seductress felt like she was struck by lightning. Everything she had done all these years was for Hao Wu-wei. Who knew that it would end up like this? For a moment, Allure Seductress was filled with boundless anger. However, the culprit, Daluo sect, was not something that her enchanted palace could afford to offend. Therefore, she picked Ong Kwang-tsung to vent her anger first. Later, when Ong Kwang-tsung's spirit stone mine was attacked, Yu Qianqiu personally experienced it. After that, Enchanted Palace was wiped out by Ong Kwang-tsung in retaliation. This was also something that the entire cultivation world knew. This story was a bit too melodramatic. After listening to it, Yu Qianqiu was speechless. He didn't know what to say. No wonder Lu Wanwan said that he was Hao Wu-wei's disciple. So this was what happened. Sigh. That old man really couldn't tell. He really didn't expect that there would be such a romantic past. This Allure Seductress was actually Master's woman. Then wouldn't she really be on the same level as Master's wife? Chapter 223. Hee hee. What? You didn't expect this, right? The Allure Beauty laughed like a silver bell. I sigh. With a thought, Yu Qianqiu's flying swords disappeared, removing his defense. Scratching his head, he walked in front of the Allure Beauty, smiled bitterly and bowed. Disciple Yu Qianqiu, greets Ma. Mom. For a moment, he still found it hard to associate Hao Sansi, that old man, with this charming woman, but the two of them had an affair. He had to accept it even if he didn't want to. From the old man's previous signs, he still had this woman in his heart, otherwise he wouldn't have given up on himself to that extent. If he didn't accept it, his conscience wouldn't be at ease, and the old man wouldn't die in peace. Yo, that's a good boy. The Allure Beauty obviously liked the word, Maram. With a charming smile, she walked closer and teasingly hooked his chin with her finger, and even put her arm around his shoulder. That pair of bouncy and plump breasts rubbed against his shoulder from time to time, causing Yu Qianqiu to smile bitterly. Was this woman really as infatuated as she said? Sigh. What a stunner. Damn it. It was really irritating. Unfortunately, he wouldn't do that kind of thing even if he was beaten to death. Cough cough. That. Ma'am, Why did you go to a place like 10,000 Flower Brothel? Yu Qianqiu changed the topic, and took the opportunity to stand further away. He didn't want to cause a nosebleed in front of Ma'am. What do you mean? What do you mean I went to a place like 10,000 Flower Brothel? 10,000 Flower Brothel originally belonged to the Enchanted Palace. What's so strange about me, the Palace Master, being in my own territory? The Allure Beauty laughed. What? Yu Qianqiu was stunned. So Enchanted Palace also runs a brothel. Huh. That's not right. As far as I know, before Enchanted Palace fell, this 10,000 Flower Brothel already existed. You brat. Your words are really unpleasant. The temptress rolled her eyes and sighed. Forget it, you're quite pleasing to the eye. I'll tell you some secrets. Did you think that after Ong Kwang-tsung razed the Phantom Palace to the ground, I would have no place to stay and could only hide in a brothel? Was that not the case? Yu Qianqiu smiled non-committally. This cheap mistress had really gotten into character. The 100 Charms Beauty rolled her eyes again and continued. You should know the Pink Sect, which is ranked 10th in the Devil Dao and ranked 9th after my magical illusion palace fell, right? The Red Pink Sect was known for its charm techniques. The 10,000 Flower House in the secular world was opened by the Red Pink Sect. Other than being the illusory demon palace's palace mistress, I'm also the sect master of the Pink Sect. You don't know this, right? Ah! Yu Qianqiu was stunned. To be exact, he was confused by this complicated relationship. The 10,000 Flower House originally belonged to the Magical Illusion Palace, and now it was opened by the Pink Sect. After sorting out his thoughts, he finally understood. He really didn't expect that this mistress had a double identity. She was actually in charge of 2 big sections. The 100 Charms Beauty said disdainfully, outsiders thought that the Magical Illusion Palace, which is ranked 5th in the Devil Dao, couldn't withstand the attack of the Righteous Dao's ranked 6th, Ong Kwang-tsung, and collapsed just like that. But who knew that my Magical Illusion Palace had diverted more than half of its strength to run the Pink Sect? It was really because of the sudden incident that we were caught unprepared by Ong Kwang-tsung and suffered a big loss. Otherwise, with Ong Kwang-tsung's strength, it wouldn't have been so easy to succeed. I don't understand this. Yu Qianqiu frowned and said, why did your Magical Illusion Palace divert more than half of its strength to run the Pink Sect? Wouldn't it be better to spend more effort to improve the Magical Illusion Palace's strength? Otherwise, it wouldn't have suffered losses under Ong Kwang-tsung's hands. Do you think it's easy for me, a woman, to sit in the position of Magical Illusion Palace's palace master? The 100 Charms Beauty asked back, and faintly let out a breath and said, since I, a woman, have taken the position, I naturally have to come up with means to convince my subordinates. For a long time, my Magical Illusion Palace has always been ranked 5th in the Devil Dao. In the past, which sect master didn't want to improve their strength, and didn't want to take a step forward in the ranking? But if you send them up, the sects above them will inevitably come down. Let's not talk about the Righteous Dao's reaction for now. Once you threaten the top-ranked sects, then your sect will inevitably be suppressed by the higher-ups, and it will be very difficult to take a step forward. So when I first took office, I began to quietly divert people to develop the Pink Sect. The effect is very obvious. Those top sects won't spend too much effort to pay attention to such a small sect. With the support of my Magical Illusion Palace, the Pink Sect climbed to the 10th place in just a few years. With this credit, it also allowed me to sit firmly in the position of Magical Illusion Palace Master. Master's wife is really wise and powerful. This disciple admires you. After flattering her, Yu Qianqiu smiled and said, Master's wife told me such a big secret, aren't you afraid that this disciple will leak it? Leak my secret? The 100 Charms Beauty looked him up and down, looking at him like she was looking at a stupid pig, and sneered, you should worry about yourself. The Da Luo sect wants to get rid of you as soon as possible. Ong Kwang-tsung has even put up a bounty for your capture. The entire Cultivation Alliance is looking for you everywhere, and the Devil Dao is also looking for you everywhere. Unless you continue to hide in the National Pillar General's office and continue to be a servant, don't show your face in the cultivation world. Once your whereabouts are exposed, you should be prepared to be killed by the Righteous Dao or join the Devil Dao. Yu Qianqiu was stunned. He naturally didn't know about this, and couldn't help but smile and said, Master's wife, are you trying to scare me? I'm just a core formation realm disciple. How could I cause such a big commotion between the Righteous and Devil Dao? The 100 Charms Beauty casually plucked the strings of the zither beside her, and leisurely said, The person who provides Xueqi's whereabouts will be rewarded with 1 million high-grade spirit stones. The person who takes Xueqi's head will be rewarded with 5 million high-grade spirit stones. And the person who captures Xueqi alive will be rewarded with 10 million high-grade spirit stones. If you don't believe me, go to the capital and shout, "I am Xueqi." Then you will know whether I'm telling the truth or not. Xueqi looked towards the direction of the dimly lit capital, and his face twitched. He didn't have the guts to try. In fact, he didn't even need to try to know that he killed sect master Ong Kwang-tsung, so the other party definitely wouldn't let him go easily. It's fine to be a coward once in a while, but it's not in my character to be a coward all the time. As the saying goes, the first to strike gains the upper hand, and the last to strike suffers a calamity. Since both the righteous and devil Dao are after me, then come. Who's afraid of who? If worst comes to worst, I'll just go back to Utopia and farm. Besides, I haven't fully used my troops yet. A bunch of dogs, do they really think I'm easy to step on? Thinking of this, Xueqi narrowed his eyes and lightly snorted, and a trace of ruthlessness flashed across his face. The 100 Charms beauty had been sizing him up with a smile. "Mistress, you didn't call me here just to tell me this, did you?" Xueqi turned around and asked. "Of course not." The 100 Charms beauty smiled and said, "I also didn't expect to meet you today. I'm telling you this because I know you want to avenge your master, and I also want to avenge your master. That's why I'm telling you this, and—" Xueqi asked with an inquisitive look in his eyes. The 100 Charms beauty deliberately paused, then chuckled and said, "And I also know that you definitely have someone helping you. I heard that when you killed Lu Chongqing in Swallow City, you brought hundreds of men in black, and there seem to be experts at the end of the Tribulation passing stage. Otherwise, it would have been very difficult for you to kill Lu Chongqing with your ability. Sigh. Back then, when I was at the Spirit Stone Mine in Ong Kwang-tsung, I planted a strand of divine sense on you. Who knew that it would be dispelled in the blink of an eye? It seems that your background isn't simple." Chapter 224. So she was talking about this. It seemed like there were quite a few sects that knew about this. Xueqi praised disapprovingly. "Master's wife is really well informed. You even know about this." When it comes to being well informed, I'm afraid there's no sect in the entire cultivation world that can compare to my pink sect. You must know that the purpose of my pink sect opening 10,000 flower houses in various places is to facilitate the investigation and transmission of information. Just like the trouble you've caused in Swallow City, I'll know within an hour, the 100 Charm Beauty said proudly. Xueqi was slightly taken aback. The myriad flower brothel had opened almost everywhere in the Huaxia Empire. Thinking about it carefully, the net-like myriad flower brothel was indeed very useful for gathering information. But how much manpower and money did it take? Gathering information in the cultivation world was not something that ordinary people could do. No wonder the enchanted palace was taken down by Ong Kwang-tsung. It turned out that it had been emptied long ago. But why did she say this to me? With a thought, Xueqi asked doubtfully, "Master's wife, could it be that you want us to join forces and avenge Master together?" Smart. 100 Charm Beauty smiled and said, "I also want to see what kind of people are behind you. Why can't I find anything with my information channels?" As he spoke, he leaned over with his body fragrance, as if he had no bones. Xueqi was really afraid of her. She would come over and touch him at the slightest provocation. It was true that he wanted to take advantage of her, but he couldn't do anything serious. So he didn't know who was taking advantage of who. He could only pretend to think of something and quietly took a step away. He frowned and said, "I do have some people behind me, but I'm afraid it won't be easy for Master's wife to meet them." "What? Master's wife? I told you so many secrets. Are you still going to keep them from me?" 100 Charm Beauty crossed her arms and smiled. Naturally, it became an attractive scenery. "Master's wife, don't misunderstand," Xueqi said solemnly. "Master's wife wants to meet them. Unless you are willing to give them all your strength, they won't meet you." This time, 100 Charm Beauty couldn't laugh anymore. "Give them all my strength? Wasn't this a joke?" She stared at Xueqi with sparkling eyes and frowned. "Xueqi, tell me honestly, are you being controlled by the person behind you? Let me tell you, even if your master was still alive, he wouldn't want you to sacrifice yourself to avenge him." What was this cheap master's wife thinking? Who was controlling who? Yu Qianqiu was slightly stunned, and then he felt a little touched. It seemed that she really had deep feelings for his master. How Sansi. Otherwise, she wouldn't be so concerned about him. He shook his head and said, "Master's wife, you are mistaken. I am not controlled by them. I am just very good friends with them." Seeing that he was unwilling to speak, the Allure Beauty didn't force him. She sighed and said, "It's not that I don't want to let go of the authority in my hands, but the human heart is unpredictable. Before I take revenge for your master, it's impossible for me to hand over the power in my hands to others. Actually, I've been tired of this kind of life for a long time. I can't compare to you men. No matter how high my cultivation is, I'm still a woman. I don't want to live forever either." Her tone was full of helplessness. Yu Qianqiu smiled awkwardly. He actually wanted to take control of the Allure Beauty's power, but after hearing her words, he could only give up on that idea. The moon was enchanting, and the night breeze was refreshing. The two fell into a short silence. "Master's wife, can you find the locations of all the spirit stone mines in Deluo sect and Ongquangceng?" Yu Qianqiu suddenly asked. "What do you want?" The Allure Beauty suddenly turned around and asked. "Hee hee." Yu Qianqiu sneered and said, "Since you dare to have designs on me, you have to pay a price. Didn't you attack one of Ongquangceng's spirit stone mines in the past? This time, I want to learn from Master's wife." The Allure Beauty frowned slightly and said, "You want the locations of all the spirit stone mines in both sects?" "Why? Is it very difficult?" Yu Qianqiu asked. The Allure Beauty shook her head and said, "The information on the spirit stone mines of all the major sects is readily available. I can give it to you any time you want. However, since I caused a ruckus in the past, all the sects have strengthened their defenses around the spirit stone mines. If you have designs on so many places at once, I'm afraid it will be very dangerous." Seeing that she was so concerned about him, Yu Qianqiu was once again moved. He smiled and said, "Don't worry, Master's wife, I am very afraid of death. I will not joke around with my life. I have my own plans for the specific operation." The Allure Beauty nodded and said, "All right, I will organize it for you tonight. If you want, you can come to 10,000 Flower House to find me." "Then Disciple will thank Master's wife in advance," Yu Qianqiu saluted, then looked at the sky and said, "Disciple still has something to do, so I will take my leave first." Finished speaking, he summoned a flying sword and was about to leave. However, the Allure Beauty laughed and said, "Why are you in such a hurry to leave? Are you afraid that I will eat you?" Damn. She was just being serious for a while. Why is she here again? Yu Qianqiu looked around. This really was a good place to do dirty things. There was no need to be afraid of people disturbing him. He couldn't help but smile bitterly and said, "Could it be that Master's wife wants Disciple to accompany you to see the scenery?" "Not today. Next time, I will find a chance to let you accompany me to see the scenery." The Allure Beauty giggled non-stop, walked closer and said, "You are leaving just like this? Are you not going to give Master's wife a gift?" "Master's wife, whatever you want. Just say it. As long as it is within my means, I will give it to you," Yu Qianqiu said helplessly. Meeting this kind of master's wife, there was really nothing he could do. He was really afraid that she would ask him to marry her, so should he refuse? The Allure Beauty didn't answer for a long time. Instead, she leisurely paced around a few times. The moonlight vividly showed off the curves under her thin veil. Yu Qianqiu took a breath and looked to the side. "I heard that the two songs circulating in the cultivation world were composed by you. Why don't you compose a song for Master's wife as a gift? This won't force you, right?" The Allure Beauty finally said the gift she wanted for their first meeting. Since Master's wife has asked, how can Disciple dare to disobey? "Master's wife, please wait a moment, let me think about it." After finishing speaking, Yu Qianqiu also let out a sigh of relief. "So this is what you want. I will just casually pirate a song for you." Seeing him slowly pondering, the Allure Beauty's eyes lit up. It should be known that Yu Qianqiu's two songs had spread throughout the cultivation world. Everyone would regard them as classics, especially women, who especially liked them. However, there were not many people who knew that it was composed by this Yu Qianqiu in front of her. Unexpectedly, as soon as she asked, he actually agreed. Seeing him in deep thought, The Allure Beauty thought that he was racking his brains to come up with ideas in his mind. However, she didn't know which song he was thinking about. Of course, the song couldn't be too avant-garde. It definitely wouldn't work if he came up with something like, hum, haha, use nunchakus. It must be something that ancient people could understand and suitable for her. After a long time, she saw him nodding as if he had understood something. He walked to the Allure Beauty zither, grabbed it, walked to a rock on the cliff, sat cross-legged, put the zither on his knees, and slightly adjusted his mood. Then he said indifferently, "Master's wife, this song is for you on behalf of Master." The Allure Beauty was stunned. Just when she was about to say something, she heard the sound of the zither, so she had to calm down and listen. As her thoughts sank along with the prelude, how Wu Wei's appearance in the past appeared in front of her eyes, as if he wanted to tell her something. At this time, Yu Qianqiu had already started to sing along with the sound of the zither. Don't mention the past again. Life is full of ups and downs. Even if the memory can't be erased, love and hate are still in the heart. If you really want to cut off the past and let tomorrow continue, you don't have to painstakingly ask for my news. Love is a difficult problem, dazzling and confusing. Maybe it's possible to forget the pain, but it's too difficult to forget you. You never really left. You are always in my heart. I still love you. I can't do anything about myself. Because I still have a dream, I still have you in my heart. I'm always easily moved by the past. I always feel heartache for you. Don't be reluctant to stay in the years. I have thousands of unintentional tenderness. Don't ask me if we will meet again. Don't care if my words are insincere. Why don't you understand, as long as there is love, there will be pain. One day you will know, life will not be different without me. Life is already too fast. I'm so afraid, always with tears in my eyes. Forget me, there will be no pain, leave the past in the wind. The moonlight was like silver, the mountain wind was blowing. Yu Qianqiu sat on the edge of the cliff and sang with all his heart. At this time the temptress was no longer as seductive as before, her eyes were already full of tears, she looked like she was scared out of her wits, as if she was talking to someone, her mouth muttered, "Don't mention the past. I really have to cut the past. Maybe it's possible to forget the pain, but it's not easy to forget you. You are always in my heart. As long as there is love, there will be pain. Forget me, there will be no pain, leave the past in the wind." "Wu Wei, are you talking to me?" After playing and singing a few times, Yu Qianqiu let out a breath, stood up and turned around. Seeing the heartbroken look of the temptress, he was suddenly stunned. He couldn't help but shake his head. "Another infatuated woman. I hope this song is helpful to you, it can make you think better." He walked over and handed over the zither in his hand, softly said, "Master's wife." The temptress wiped away her tears, took the zither and said with a trembling voice, "Yu Qianqiu, what is the name of this song?" Seeing her like that, Yu Qianqiu really couldn't bear to tell her the name of the song, but he couldn't think of a better name at the moment, so he could only bite the bullet and said, "The name of the song is When Love is Past." Master's wife. Disciple will take his leave first. After saying that, he flew away from the crime scene on his sword. Under the moonlight on the peak of the mountain, there were a few old pines, the night wind was blowing gently. A woman wrapped in red silk was holding the zither, muttering, "When love is past. When love is past." Chapter 225. In the myriad fragrance garden of Fuxian Island, Ferdinand had been suffering. The father-daughter relationship that had improved with great difficulty had now plummeted back to its original state. Furong once again regarded her father as a stranger. She even avoided him everywhere and didn't want to see him. The cause of the matter was naturally that Yu Qianqiu, who was expelled from Fuxian Island. Ferdinand was also a shrewd person. He naturally saw that his daughter had already lost her chastity to that bastard. However, it was useless even if he was unhappy. Who asked his daughter to like him? He could only wander around the sect every day, hoping to get more news about that brat. Furong didn't have the mood to cultivate these few days. She lay on the bed in the room all day, staring at a purple gold necklace in a daze. This was refined by Yu Qianqiu for her. There was a small transparent crystal ball hanging on the purple necklace. There was a little red in the small ball, which was very beautiful. Yu Qianqiu once told her that the red inside was a drop of his blood. She didn't know how it was put in. "You don't want me anymore? You're going to abandon me?" Furong looked at the necklace in her hand and muttered to herself. Her tears wet the pillow again. She didn't know how many times she had repeated this sentence these few days. Who doesn't want you anymore? A familiar voice suddenly appeared in the room. Furong turned her head to look. Yu Qianqiu, who was dressed in black and wearing a crooked hat, was looking at her and laughing. Furong sat up abruptly and rubbed her eyes a few times. She thought she had seen wrongly. Yu Qianqiu laughed and said, "What? You don't even recognize me, your husband?" Yu Qianqiu. Furong's eyes lit up. She immediately ran down from the bed barefooted and directly jumped onto Yu Qianqiu. She hugged him tightly and didn't let go. She buried her head and cried non-stop. Yu Qianqiu hugged her but with both hands and touched it. He scared and said, "Why are you full of bones? Have you not eaten for a long time? It's not as comfortable as before." Hearing this, Furong immediately stopped crying and got down from his body. Using her hand to feel his body, she frowned and said, "I seem to have lost some weight. Don't you like it?" Sigh. Yu Qianqiu let out a long sigh and carried her to the bed. He crouched down, grabbed her feet that were dirty from stepping on the ground, and carefully patted them clean. He picked up the shoes under the bed and helped her put them on while saying, "My family's Furong is pretty, but if you're as thin as firewood, then you're not pretty. In the future, remember to eat more. Don't think that you can stop eating just because you've reached the core formation realm. Have you seen those old guys on Fuxian Island who often don't eat? Let's not talk about being old, dry and skinny. Do you think you'll look good like that? I don't like it anyway." Furong thought about what he said, and a withered old face appeared in her mind. If she also became like that? Furong shuddered at the thought of it. She hurriedly nodded and said, "Then I'll eat more in the future. You can take me away too." Ah. Yu Qianqiu's face twitched a little. It wasn't hard to take her away. The key was that there was already a Chu Ping'er in Utopia, so there was no problem with Bai Suzhen. He just didn't know how Chu Ping'er and Furong would react when they met. It was better not to let them meet for the time being. After thinking it through, his expression suddenly became serious. He sat side by side with her and said, "Furong, I want you to do me a favor." Furong, who was previously crying, now seemed to have become a different person with Yu Qianqiu by her side. She nodded excitedly and said, "What do you want me to help with? Do you need spiritual herb seeds? I'll ask my father for it. If he doesn't give it to me, I'll help you steal it." In her impression, every time he asked her for help, it was nothing more than getting spiritual herb seeds. Yu Qianqiu's face twitched again. "With your level, you can steal things from Myriad Fragrance Garden? Wasn't it because that old fellow Ferdinand turned a blind eye to it?" He coughed and said cautiously, "I don't want you to help me with this. I want you to stay in supporting Xian Island and help me be a spy." "What is a spy?" Furong's eyes widened in surprise. Yu Qianqiu acted as if he was serious and whispered in her ear. After Furong heard it, her expression also became serious. She nodded and said, "Don't worry. I'll write down all the news from supporting Xian Island. I'll tell you when you come. Then I'll leave the matters here to you. I'll leave first." Yu Qianqiu stood up and said, "Wait." Furong hugged him and said shyly, "Don't you miss me?" Yu Qianqiu was stunned, but he immediately understood. This girl used to be afraid, but now she's tasting it again. He looked around and chuckled. "So it's here? It's not convenient. It won't be good if someone hears us." Furong bit her lip and said with a red face, "We'll be fine as long as we don't make a sound." "Is that so?" Yu Qianqiu nodded his head. Then, he put his mouth next to her ear and said with a sinister smile, "Then let's try it?" His words were polite, but in fact, his hands were already helping Furong undress. As soon as Yu Qianqiu returned to Utopia, he went straight to Guan Yu's room in the military camp. He took the black clothes from Guan Yu and asked while changing, "How's the new battle plan going?" "No problem," Guan Yu said in a reporting tone. "According to your request, they've been trained to the high standard of ending battles quickly. Chen Feng has also provided enough qi recovery pills according to your request, and they've been distributed to everyone in the army. Each person has 2 storage bags with the capacity of 3 rooms." "Very good." Yu Qianqiu nodded and said, "Have you made arrangements for the 100 people I got last time?" "They've already started cultivating. The basic cultivation techniques are mainly based on the supporting Immortal Islands techniques. Chen Feng has already distributed the newly refined qi storage pills, which will allow them to enter the qi refinement stage as soon as possible. The women under Sister Bai are also planting a large number of spiritual herbs for refining foundation pills. Chen Feng has also started refining foundation pills. I believe that when they reach the 10th level of the qi refinement stage, all of them will be able to break through to the foundation building stage in one go, Guan Yu reported. Yu Qianchou thought for a moment and said, those who are too old, after breaking through to the foundation building stage, let them open up wastelands and farm. After all, they're old, and it's too late to start cultivating now. Even if they continue to cultivate, there won't be any big breakthroughs. Let them live a few more years. Fighting and killing things aren't suitable for them. It just so happens that we can solve the increasingly tight food supply situation here. Let's try our best to be self-sufficient. That way, we won't have to always go out to buy food. If there's a chance, I'll get more people here. Got it. Guan Yu nodded. Yu Qianchou's hand that was changing paused, and he said in a deep voice, for this battle, you have to be mentally prepared. I'm afraid that some casualties are unavoidable. I understand. It's impossible to not die in a battle. Guan Yu's tone was a little heavy. After changing into a set of black clothes, the two of them walked together to the military camp's war room. Inside, there was a long table. The company and platoon leaders of each company had been waiting for a long time. When they saw the two of them enter, someone shouted, "Stand up!" All of them stood up with a swish and performed the standard military salute taught by Yu Qianchou. They said in unison, "Chief." Chapter 226. Yu Qianchou raised his hand and saluted back, saying, "Everyone please sit." With that said, he walked to the end of the long table and sat down. Guan Yu walked to where Yu Qianchou was supposed to sit. The two of them were facing each other, so their heads had been turned. Originally, Guan Yu was unwilling. Logically speaking, his current position should be the place where the leader of the team was qualified to sit. However, Yu Qianchou refused because he had not been here for a long time. Guan Yu was the actual person in charge of the daily training and management here. He had to help Guan Yu establish his prestige because Guan Yu, as the chief instructor, had the lowest cultivation level in this group. Although he was working hard to catch up, it was enough for Yu Qianchou to firmly grasp this point. It was enough for him to be the spiritual leader of this team. The platoon leaders began to report their respective training situation to Guan Yu. Like an outsider, Yu Qianchou listened attentively and took advantage of this free time to size up everyone. He was quite satisfied with the results. There was no longer the old-fashioned cultivator expression on everyone's faces. Instead, everyone was in high spirits, looking a bit like soldiers. After listening to the reports, Guan Yu began to announce the operation plan to everyone. It was not easy to come by this plan. Some time ago, Yu Qianchou had obtained the locations of the various sects' spirit stone mines from the Allure Beauty. He had picked the Daluo sect and Ong Kwangsung's mines to study. Only then did he realize that the Allure Beauty had prepared a lot of detailed information for him. The guards of each spirit stone mine, as well as their daily routine, were clearly marked. Yu Qianchou followed the map and personally investigated each and every one of the spirit stone mines of the Daluo sect and Ong Kwangsung. He did so in secret, not daring to reveal his whereabouts. Finally, he came up with this operation plan. There are 15 spirit stone mines in Daluo sect and 6 in Ong Kwangsung. Our goal this time is to loot all 21 of them. After Guan Yu revealed his objective, he distributed the Jade Archives to everyone and said, "The Jade Archives in your hands contain detailed information about the various spirit stone mines." Ah! Everyone looked at each other in dismay. They hadn't expected the battle plan to be so huge. They had to attack 21 spirit stone mines in one go. Expressions of difficulty appeared on their faces. Yu Qianchou, who was sitting quietly at the back, suddenly laughed and said, "Everyone, don't hold back. If you have any opinions, feel free to voice them out. Our goal is naturally to better complete this mission." Someone immediately stood up and said, "Leader, I'm from the Exalted Sect, so I have some understanding of their spirit stone mines." Ever since the Phantom Palace attacked Ong Kwangsung's spirit stone mines, the defenses of the Exalted Sect's spirit stone mines have been strengthened. Every spirit stone mine now has an early-stage Tribulation passing elder overseeing it. Although our 3 companies have the advantage in numbers and strength, We don't have anyone who can fight against a tribulation passing cultivator. I'm afraid that even if we manage to take down one mine, we will still suffer heavy casualties. Let's not talk about Ong Kwangtsung. It's basically impossible for us to take down all 15 of the Exalted Sect's spirit stone mines one by one. When he finished speaking, Yu Qianqiu raised his hand and gestured for him to sit down. Then, he smiled and nodded at Guan Yu. The leader has already taken your concerns into consideration and has made detailed arrangements to deal with them. Let me brief you all on the overall situation. Guan Yu glanced at the crowd and said in a loud voice, Ong Kwangtsung has 6 spirit stone mines. Each mine is guarded by a late-stage nascent soul cultivator, 3 mid-stage nascent soul and 3 early-stage nascent soul cultivators, a total of 15 core formation cultivators, more than 50 foundation establishment cultivators, and 150 miners of varying cultivation levels. This kind of strength is a piece of cake for us. It won't be a problem to take them down one by one. As for the Exalted Sect's 15 spirit stone mines. At this point, Guan Yu's expression became serious. He stood up and continued, each mine is guarded by an early-stage tribulation passing cultivator. There are 10 nascent soul cultivators, nearly 50 core formation and foundation establishment cultivators, and nearly 200 miners. Most of them are at the foundation establishment stage. Most of them are at the qi condensation stage like Ong Kwangtsung. If the Exalted Sect didn't send an early-stage tribulation passing cultivator to guard the mines, it wouldn't be a problem. In view of this, Leader has already set up an early tribulation transcendence cultivator in each of the 15 Daluo sect mines. As soon as we take action, the cultivator will help us tie down the enemy tribulation transcendence expert. And if something goes wrong, Leader will ask Misty Palace's Big Sister Bai to personally take action. I'm sure no one doubts Big Sister Bai's strength. Everyone exchanged glances and nodded. Naturally, this arrangement wouldn't be a problem. However, where did Leader find 15 tribulation passing cultivators? Could it be that Leader has another force? At this time, someone stood up and asked, Instructor, this is a good idea, but as long as we attack one of the spirit stone mines, the sects will be alerted. What if the Exalted Sect and Ong Kwangtsung send a large number of experts? I believe that both the Exalted Sect and Ong Kwangtsung are not people we can withstand. How are we going to attack the other spirit stone mines then? Yu Qianqiu sat at the back with a smile and didn't say anything. His subordinate's words were a little discouraging, but he didn't mind at all. This was exactly the atmosphere he needed. Only when everyone was involved would they be motivated to work together. Only then could they make up for the flaws in the battle plan. After all, he wasn't an immortal who could plan everything perfectly. Guan Yu raised his hand and gestured for the man to sit down. He said, Company Commander first, Leader has already considered your concerns. Therefore, there is a very important task for your company to complete in this battle plan. Company Commander first, I want you to find a map of the mines in the Jade Archive. The location marked 1 on the map is the location of the communication array in each mine. Before we attack, you will first take out a platoon of soldiers and hand them over to Leader to command. Leader will lead them to completely destroy the communication array in the Spirit Stone mines. This is to prevent the news of the attack from leaking out. At the same time, all the troops will end the battle as quickly as possible. Do any of you have any questions? Everyone shook their heads and sent their divine senses into the Jade Archives to examine them. Sure enough, there were maps of 21 spirit stone mines within. Upon closer inspection, they realized that their training during this period of time had been for the purpose of preparing to attack these spirit stone mines. The location marked 1 should be the location of the communication array in the mines. Guan Yu looked around at everyone and said in a deep voice, Since there are no more questions, the attack will proceed according to the latest training method. Dismissed and get ready. Yes. Everyone got up and quickly left the war room to make their own arrangements. At this moment, Yu Qianqiu said in a deep voice, Yun Chong, in an hour, all combat troops will assemble and depart. An hour later, a hurried and loud bugle call rang out in the camp. A group of fully equipped men in black clothes and masks quickly rushed out of the barracks and assembled in 3 groups at the plaza. Guan Yu rode his tall horse and paced back and forth below the stage. Yu Qianqiu stood on the stage with his hands behind his back and looked down at the people below. At this moment, a ray of light descended from the entrance of the camp. Chu Ping had arrived with little Wu Chou. The two of them had been attracted by the bugle call. During this period of time, Little Wu Cho had become attached to this beautiful sister-in-law of his. Every day, she would bring him along to experience the feeling of flying on a sword. The little brat was having a great time. Just as the two of them were about to step into the camp, they were stunned by the formation inside. There were so many people standing together in a strange black color. They were lined up in a neat square formation, but it was so quiet that only the sound of breathing could be heard. A strong killing intent emanated from the camp, forcing the two of them to stay away from it. Little Wu Cho was startled by the aura. He hid behind his sister-in-law and peeked at his brother who was looking down at them from the stage. Yu Qianqiu glanced at the two people at the entrance. He raised an arm and opened his palm towards the crowd. After he covered everyone with his divine sense, he shouted in a deep voice, "Depart!" In an instant, all the people on and off the stage disappeared. There was no one left in the camp. Chu Pinger and little Wu Cho didn't dare to go in. They held hands and left in silence. Chapter 227. Behind a barren hillside, hundreds of men in black suddenly appeared. They immediately formed a battle formation and guarded the surroundings. Their movements were quite well trained, and their cooperation was quite tacit. Yu Qianqiu was dressed in black, but he did not cover his face like the others. Only Guan Yu, who was sitting on the horse, was still dressed in a green robe. The wind whistled. Yu Qianqiu looked around. This was the location he had chosen when he was scouting. From a tactical point of view, this place was more suitable for gathering troops than the Spirit Stone mine not far away. Moreover, it was the most suitable place for so many people to advance stealthily. "Follow me in a row!" Yu Qianqiu shouted softly. A flying sword gently lifted him up, and he flew along the undulating mountain range. A row of people followed closely behind, all of them moving forward while staying a little above the ground. Guan Yu waved his hand, and the rest of the people quickly dispersed in groups. Only 3 company commanders were left by his side. Yu Qianqiu brought more than 30 people to a call and hid. Ong Kwangsung's Spirit Stone mine was at the bottom of a slope in front of them. They could already hear the shouts of the people inside. If they showed their heads now, they would definitely be discovered by the people on the high ground. He needed to wait for the others to surround the Spirit Stone mine within the stipulated time. Then he would launch a sudden attack. At that time, even if the other party discovered them, it would not be much of a problem. It would be enough to catch them off guard. There were no unusual movements in the surroundings. Obviously, the other people's encirclement had not been discovered by Ong Kwangsung's people. At this time, if someone looked down from the sky, they would see that there were hundreds of black shadows surrounding the Spirit Stone mine. In fact, this method was not very safe. The safest way would be to suddenly appear in the Spirit Stone mine and quickly launch a surprise attack. But the key was that when Yu Qianqiu came to investigate, there was no way to enter the mine. He could only secretly observe from the periphery. He could not run in and leave a positioning mark in a suitable place for everyone to appear instantly. Because Yu Qianqiu had the golden pearl, if he controlled his breathing and remained motionless, it was estimated that no one would be able to discover him. However, if he were to sneak in, there would inevitably be some movement. With his cultivation, it would be very difficult to hide from the nascent soul experts inside. Estimating that it was about time, Yu Qianqiu made a ready gesture to everyone. One of his hands made a gesture of 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Everyone stared at the movements of his hands, and the flying sword in their hands was ready. When the last finger was flicked, Yu Qianqiu took the lead and fiercely flew out of the call on his sword. The 30 or so people below him all flew out in a flash. Yu Qianqiu's mind moved. His fingers pointed to a tall wooden building in front of him. Hundreds of flying swords suddenly appeared around him. Xiao xiao. They shot out like a storm. On the wooden building, there were 2 disciples of Foundation Establishment Stage leaning on it and watching the scenery with boredom. Although their duty was to observe the surrounding situation and prevent sudden danger, no one would think that robbing the Spirit Stone mine would happen easily. After all, Ong Kwangsung was not an ordinary sect. The Magic Illusion Palace was an example. When they heard the sound and turned around to find the hundreds of cold lights, it was too late. The flying swords were as fast as lightning. The speed of the flying swords was Yu Qianqiu's forte. It was suitable for a sneak attack. Puff puff puff. The hundreds of flying swords smashed the wooden building on the high road. A few puffs of blood exploded and limbs fell. The hundreds of flying swords quickly returned to Yu Qianzhou's side like locusts, protecting his body. More than 30 people quickly flew over the collapsed wooden building. Yu Qianzhou pointed the sword in his hand at a cave. The information provided by the Enchantress of 100 Charms proved that it was the place where the communication array was set up. The dozens of people shot over at their fastest speed. In the meantime, a few Ong Guangceng disciples ran over. However, they were unable to block the fierce attack led by the nascent Soul Stage black-clothed members. With a single blow, several people were already dismembered. Just as a few people stuck their heads out of the cave to see what was going on outside, dozens of people each took out a spirit talisman and threw it in. A series of loud crackling sounds came from inside, followed by miserable screams. Among the dozens of people, a few people immediately guarded the cave entrance. The rest all rushed in. With the sound of movement, Guan Yu rode his horse to the top of a spirit stone mine. He stroked his long beard and pulled out a large flag from his storage pouch. Hi! With a sound, he inserted it into the mountain top. The hero flag fluttered in the wind. This was the signal for an all-out attack. How dare you? Who dares to provoke me, Ong Guangceng? A figure flew out from a row of wooden houses in the mine. Then, as if a nest had exploded, all the disciples guarding the mine of Ong Guangceng flew out. Looking around, a group of black-clothed people had already surrounded the mine in the mountain. From the stunned expressions of many people, it could be seen that they clearly had not reacted to what was happening. A small black flag appeared in the hands of the third company's commander beside Guan Yu. He raised his hand and waved it. More than 100 people belonging to the third company immediately shot into the crowd from all directions and attacked fiercely. Immediately, the scene of the Ong Guangceng disciples surrounding the more than 100 people of the third company appeared. For a moment, there was a flash of light, and the sounds of fighting could be heard incessantly. With a cold snort from Guan Yu, a small black flag also appeared in the hands of the second company's commander. He raised it and waved it left and right. The Ong Guangceng disciples who were fighting the third company in the mine were immediately surrounded by more than 100 people from the outside. A massacre had begun. Ong Guangceng was immediately attacked from all sides. He was in a precarious situation and could be annihilated at any time. This was a battle without any suspense. The people from Utopia were originally the elite disciples of the top 3 sects in the Orthodox and Devil sects. They had been through a long period of killing in the Demon Ghost region. In terms of fighting, they were top-notch experts among people of the same cultivation level. Half of them were at the nascent soul stage and half of them were at the core formation stage. After going through military training, they emphasized on mutual cooperation. If one person attacked, there would definitely be 2 to 3 people to help defend. As for Ong Guangceng, most of them were at the foundation establishment stage. There was only one person who was at the late stage of the nascent soul stage. That person had long been entangled and beaten up by a few nascent soul stage cultivators. The company commander raised his hand and clenched his fist. The remaining 2 platoons immediately narrowed the encirclement to prevent anyone from taking the opportunity to escape. On the other side, after Yu Qianzhou successfully destroyed the communication array in the cave with his men, he immediately ordered the platoon to ignore the other fights and split into groups of 2 to 3 to search for the miners in the various caves. The miners were disciples who did not have any artifacts, so they had to be captured alive. Those who could not be captured alive were to be killed on the spot. The platoon immediately accepted the order and dispersed. Yu Qianzhou flew to Guan Yu's side. It just so happened that the late-stage nascent soul cultivator from Ong Guangceng saw that the situation was hopeless and tried to break through the encirclement to escape. Yu Qianzhou coldly glanced at him and shouted in a deep voice, "Kill!" He did not have a good impression of these so-called elders from Ong Guangceng. The 3 late nascent soul stage company commanders beside Guan Yu flashed over at the same time, and with a joint attack in midair, they knocked the man down on the spot. The 3 nascent soul stage cultivators who were originally surrounding him also flew up from below, 3 on top and 3 below. The 6 of them attacked in midair, and the late nascent soul stage cultivator from the Azure Light sect let out a miserable scream, and turned into a rain of blood. The 3 company commanders flew back to Guan Yu's side as if nothing had happened. The battle ended very quickly. From the start of the attack to the end, it only took a quarter of an hour. Yu Qianzhou looked at his subordinates in the field. After the battle, not a single one of them died. Only a few of them were slightly injured. With such an absolute advantage, coupled with careful preparation and a surprise attack, they should be able to achieve such a result. Yu Qianchou nodded in satisfaction and shouted, "Don't hesitate, clean up the battlefield. Take everything you can quickly." The remaining 2 platoons immediately rushed down. At the same time, more than 10 nascent soul stage cultivators flew in all directions to help. The group of people immediately moved. Those Ong Guangceng disciples who were lying on the ground and dying were immediately stabbed a few more times. There was no need to leave those who couldn't be saved alive. This was one of the subjects in the previous drill. Then, a large-scale sweep began. Storage bags and the like were directly pulled out from the corpses. Even a flying sword that had fallen to the ground was not spared. The platoon that had been ordered by Yu Qianchou to capture the miners escorted a group of people out one after another. These miners were people who were not well liked in Ong Guangceng, and they had suffered a lot here. During the capture process, almost no one resisted. At this moment, when they saw the corpses of the Ong Guangceng disciples on the ground, they did not have a trace of pity on their faces. Instead, when they faced the men in black around them, their expressions were filled with fear, not knowing what would happen to them. The platoon leader came over and reported, "Leader, all the miners that can be captured are here." Yu Qianchou waved his hand to dismiss him. He leaped into the air and pressed down with his palm. His divine sense enveloped the trembling miners, and the platoon of people instantly entered Utopia. He then walked to the side of the Ong Guangceng disciples who were injured but could still be healed. With a wave of his hand, he sent them back to Utopia. After the entire spirit stone mine was swept, everyone quickly gathered together. Guan Yu took out a small black flag with the word "Hero" embroidered on it in gold. He waved his hand and shot it at a stone pillar. With a ding, the black flag was inserted into it. Guan Yu returned to the team. Yu Qianchou waved his hands, and everyone disappeared. The spirit stone mine of Ong Guangceng, which had been bathed in blood, was dead silent. Only the shattered corpses on the ground could prove that a fierce battle had taken place here. Chapter 228. In Utopia's military camp, when everyone returned, Bai Suzhen had already led a group of women to stand around them. They were either on the roofs or on the walls, watching over the people who had just been captured. Looking at their dispirited and pained expressions, Yu Qianchou naturally understood what Bai Suzhen had done to them. "I'll give everyone 5 minutes to rest," Yu Qianchou shouted from the field. When his gaze met Bai Suzhen's concerned gaze, he shook his head and smiled, indicating that there was no danger. After fighting with all his might, he felt that his primordial energy had been depleted. He immediately lifted his hood and took out an energy recovery pill and stuffed it into his mouth. Everyone smiled and walked to the corner of the square and began to pour out the spoils of war from the storage pouches. It was hard to tell how many things were stored in the storage pouches, but once they were poured out, it was enough to scare people. Hundreds of people shook out the storage pouches, and the things they collected suddenly piled up like a small mountain. There was a large pile of miscellaneous things, especially spirit stones. Bai Suzhen nodded slightly, and the women under her immediately flew over. They took out their storage bags and began to sort out the items. For example, the spirit stones of the lower, middle, and lower grades were all stored separately. When Yu Qianchou saw that the female disciples were very familiar with many people in the military, a thought occurred to him, and he nodded to himself. Some of them looked like a good match. It was time to allow them to take root here. Only then would they truly treat this place as their home. The soldiers here should be professional. When they were free, they could go home and live their lives. Only when they had a life would there be hope. It was not a long-term solution to rely solely on spiritual rule. As their spiritual leader, he should consider their future. When the 5 minutes were up, Guan Yu gave the order, and the special forces in black gathered again. Yu Qianchou looked at the people in front of him and said with a smile, "I just thought of something. I feel that many of our members are a good match with the female members of Ethereal Palace. I've decided that after the completion of this mission, men and women can freely interact with each other during their free time. If there's someone who has feelings for each other, they can look for your instructors to register and become Dao companions. What do you guys think?" "Good, good, good." All the warriors cheered excitedly. Some even shouted, "Long live the leader." Yu Qianchou was stunned. Damn it! Why do I feel like Hitler? Guan Yu frowned. Why did boss say something like this before the big battle? Wasn't he afraid of affecting morale? Bai Suzhen looked over in surprise. She didn't know why Yu Qianchou would suddenly have such an idea. The eyes of the female disciples who were tidying up sparkled, and many of them blushed. It was obvious that there was a man they liked in the group. Yu Qianchou waved his hand. After everyone quietened down, he said with a smile, "Let's make this clear first. It has to be voluntary. No coercion is allowed. Otherwise, I won't let him off. Anyway, Utopia is big enough. When the time comes, I'll mark out a piece of land. Those who become Dao companions will have ethereal palace build a house for everyone. Other than the normal training and missions, everyone can live a normal life. Currently, there are more men than women here, but don't worry. In the future, there will be more and more women in Utopia. After this mission is completed, I'll come up with a plan as soon as possible. Long live the leader! Long live the leader!" A group of old men shouted excitedly. "Prepare to set off." Yu Qianchou shouted in a deep voice. He, who had been smiling just now, suddenly turned hostile. Everyone was stunned and immediately quietened down. The former opened his palm and enveloped everyone with his divine sense. The group of people in the field disappeared. The battle started again. Due to the careful deployment, there were still no accidents this time, and they successfully took down another spirit stone mine. From the situation of this attack, it was obvious that Ong Guangceng did not know about the previous attack. This mine was still sparsely guarded. At the same time, it also meant that the battle plan they had come up with was feasible. In less than 8 hours, all of Ong Guangceng's spirit stone mines had been looted. Yu Qianchou wanted to see how Ong Guangceng and the other old fellows would react when they found out that all of their spirit stone mines had been looted. This time, they were much more ruthless than the Illusion Palace. Not only had the 6 spirit stone mines been looted, even the dam miners had been taken away. Even if Ong Guangceng wanted to start working again, where could he find nearly 1,000 miners? This type of work was not something ordinary people could do. At the thought of this, Yu Qianchou felt that his anger had been vented. How dare they offer a bounty to capture me? This is the consequence. Damn it. Even if you can solve the problem of the miners, you will definitely have to send a large number of people to guard the mines, and the strength you will send will probably not be weaker than this time, right? If the strength is weaker than this time, I don't mind looting again. If I can split a large number of forces from Ong Guangceng's old nest, I don't mind going up to Ong Guangceng and taking a bite or two of them. Damn it! In fact, the operation this time was not very smooth sailing. During the last battle, something regrettable happened. 2 core formation stage members died in battle, and their corpses were brought back to Utopia. It was indeed painful for Yu Qianchou. These people were all elites with rich combat experience. In addition, they had been nurtured for so many years. Although 2 people had died, it did not stop Yu Qianchou's determination to loot the Daluo sect again. With a command, the troops set off again. At a place not far from the Daluo sect's spirit stone mine, Yu Qianchou put on a golden mask that he had asked Chen Feng to make before he left. According to the agreement with the Allure Beauty, he found the early-stage Tribulation passing elder that she had sent. The elder was quite curious about Yu Qianchou. He did not know what kind of person was behind the golden mask, and he could not see through his cultivation. He had no choice but to put on the mask. First, it was to distinguish his identity from the other team members. Second, he did not want the people sent by the Allure Beauty to recognize him. If he was recognized, who knew what kind of trouble he would cause for appearing in so many places in a day? When the elder saw the black-clothed special forces that Yu Qianchou had brought with him, he was shocked. This was the first time he had seen such a group of cultivators in the cultivation world, especially after the attack had begun. With a gesture, hundreds of people separated and regrouped. They did not even need to say a word. The tacit understanding between the attack and defense was simply amazing. In the cultivation world, a person could leave his back to others without any worries. Just how much trust was this? Before the elder made his move, he also put on the black outfit that Yu Qianchou had given him. Naturally, he was afraid that the people from the Daluo sect would recognize him as an elder of the Phantom Palace. After he fought with the Daluo sect elder, Yu Qianchou's troops went all out. Since 2 of their comrades had died last time, this time, they were as ruthless as they could be. They would not let go of their opponents until they were completely out of breath. Once the aura of breaking 1,000 armies was unleashed, it would be incredible. The Da Luo sect, which was originally thought to be much more difficult to defeat than Ong Kuang Tsung, was unexpectedly faster than Ong Kuang Tsung. However, Yu Qianzhou's idea of leaving as many people alive as possible to bring back to Utopia was shattered. All the Da Luo sect disciples who were guarding the mine were killed. The battle on Yu Qianzhou's side had already ended. The two Tribulation stage cultivators fought from the sky to the ground, and from the ground back to the sky. Seeing that the elder sent by the Allure Beauty was unable to defeat the Da Luo sect elder and even seemed to be at a disadvantage, a few nascent soul cultivators rushed forward to help. However, something unfortunate happened. The difference in strength between the Tribulation stage and the nascent soul stage was like the difference between heaven and earth. The Da Luo sect elder swung his sword in the air, and a sharp sword light slashed out. Two of the four nascent soul cultivators who rushed forward immediately turned into a rain of blood. Yu Qianzhou's eyes were bloodshot. He roared crazily and called the remaining two people back. Then Bai Suzhen, dressed in white, appeared in the air. Chapter 229. The two early-stage Tribulation Transcendence cultivators in the air were shocked. They stopped fighting and dodged to the side, sizing up Bai Suzhen who had suddenly appeared. The Da Luo sect elder suddenly turned around and fled. This woman's cultivation was unfathomable, and it was obvious that she was not one of them. It was more important for him to stay alive. Yu Qianzhou raised his hand and pointed, shouting, "Don't let him escape. I want his life." The men in black felt warmth in their hearts. They could feel the anger in their leader's heart after two of their team members had died. Their leader cared about them a lot. Bai Suzhen could naturally feel his current mood. Her pretty face turned cold, and her beautiful eyes looked at the person who had escaped. After disappearing into thin air, she reappeared in front of the Da Luo sect elder. When the crowd looked from afar, they saw Bai Suzhen grabbing 5 black fiends with her palms and trapping the elder. The elder did not even have the strength to fight back, and he was turned into a rain of blood by the 5 black fiends the moment they clashed. He screamed in pain in the air. Teleportation. Early-stage Tribulation Transcendence. The elder sent by the Allure Seductress sucked in a breath of cold air, secretly shocked. The people from Utopia knew that Misty Palace's sister Bai was powerful, but they did not expect her to be so powerful that an early-stage Tribulation Transcendence cultivator could not withstand a single attack from her. They all looked at each other. Little did they know that after Bai Suzhen sensed Yu Qianzhou's anger, her killing intent rose, and she used the mountain-piercing claw. With her late-stage Tribulation Transcendence cultivation and a high-grade magic treasure, dealing with a mere early-stage Tribulation Transcendence cultivator was naturally a piece of cake. "You can go back now." Yu Qianzhou pointed at the elder sent by the Allure Seductress and said rudely. He had lost 2 nascent soul experts, so he could not be polite even if he wanted to. That person cupped his hands in the air, not daring to say anything. If he angered Bai Suzhen, his life would be in danger as well. He quickly flew away. Before leaving, he glanced at the golden word "hero" on the black flag. When Bai Suzhen stood by Yu Qianzhou's side, Yu Qianzhou's face was still gloomy, as if he was still angry. At the side, Guan Yu cupped his fists and called out, "Sister Bai." Bai Suzhen nodded at him and quietly guarded beside Yu Qianzhou. Guan Yu didn't say anything else and ordered his subordinates to quickly clean up the battlefield. After everyone returned to Utopia with their spoils of war, they rested for a while before setting off again. With the previous example, Yu Qianzhou no longer had any hope for the people sent by the Allure Beauty. Bai Suzhen changed into a black outfit that accentuated her curves, and a black veil covered her face as she followed Yu Qianzhou to fight. Everyone had already seen Bai Suzhen's means. Now that they saw Sister Bai change into her attire and fight personally, they were immediately filled with confidence. In the subsequent battles, Bai Suzhen would personally take action against the Tribulation Transcendence elders of the Da Luo sect's Spirit Stone mines. She would usually finish off her opponents in 1 or 2 exchanges. As for the elders sent by the Allure Beauty, they were sent by Yu Qianzhou to put out the fire. If there was a slightly tough spot that threatened the safety of his team members or made it difficult for them, the elder would immediately rush over. After using it, he would immediately chase them away. The elders usually didn't dare to have any objections. The key was that one of the black-robed masked women was too powerful. She was actually at the late stage of the Tribulation Transcendent stage. In less than a day, the Da Luo Sec's 15 spirit stone mines and Ong Kwangsung's 6 spirit stone mines had all been looted. There were more than a dozen piles of spoils of war in Utopia, and it would probably take more than a day to sort them out. In this battle, they had lost 5 nascent soul cultivators and 13 core formation cultivators, a total of 18 members. Yu Qianzhou's heart ached terribly. Fortunately, more than 4,000 people had come in at once. Most of them were miners from the 21 spirit stone mines, which was more than 10 times the original number. Seeing so many people, Yu Qianzhou's mood finally improved. In the following period of time, Yu Qianzhou didn't leave Utopia at all. He didn't even have time to flirt with Chu Ping. He was extremely busy with Guan Yu. With more people, there were naturally more things to sort out. As the chief instructor, Guan Yu was busy and happy. Originally, he had more than 300 people under him. But now, he had nearly 5,000 people under him. The feeling was naturally different. On the same day, Yu Qianzhou summoned Guan Yu, Chen Feng, and the 3 company commanders to a meeting to discuss the issue of the nearly 5,000 people. After some discussion, Yu Qianzhou made a decision. Everyone was divided into 48 companies, with 3 companies forming a battalion. There would be a total of 16 battalions. One of the battalions would be given to Chen Feng to help him with logistics. After all, with more people, Chen Feng would also have to increase his manpower. Otherwise, the logistics would not be able to keep up. Chen Feng naturally had no objections to this, but he asked Yu Qianzhou to give him a backbone who was good at management. Most of his attention was on crafting talismans, refining weapons, and refining pills. How could he have the time to manage so many people? Yu Qianzhou handed this matter over to Guan Yu. Guan Yu generously called a platoon commander over and announced his promotion to battalion commander on the spot to help Chen Feng manage the group of people under him. When the platoon commander heard that he was going to leave the combat unit to handle logistics, he was clearly unwilling. Even a fool would know that with so many people, he would definitely be promoted. The atmosphere in the Hero Special Forces was one where fighting was an honor. Who would be willing to go to the logistics department? However, he had no choice. After all, the few powerhouses of Utopia thought highly of him. After thinking about it, he felt that it was an honorable thing to do, so he reluctantly agreed. However, he also made a request. He requested that he bring 3 people from the old team members to help him manage. Otherwise, it would be a little troublesome to rely on one person. Naturally, the powerhouses had no objections to this. Of course, this was only a small part of the story. The remaining 15 battalions were divided into 5 regiments, with each regiment having 3 battalions. 3 company commanders were promoted to regiment commanders. Then, 2 platoon commanders, who had performed outstandingly in this battle, were specially promoted. Now, there were 5 regiment commanders. The 2 people who had been promoted from platoon commanders to regiment commanders were immediately called to participate in the meeting. Head of State Yu Qianzhou announced the appointment of the 5 people on the spot. The 2 people who had suddenly been promoted from platoon commanders to regiment commanders were a little overjoyed. According to the current system, they had been promoted by several levels. The 2 of them thanked the head of state excitedly. This was much more exciting than being in those bull-asterisk tea sects in the cultivation world. This meant that the 2 of them could also participate in such high-level meetings in the future. The 3 regiment commanders who were originally company commanders congratulated the 2 of them. The 2 of them thanked them reservedly. Back then, the 3 of them were their leaders. Never in their dreams would they have imagined that they would be on the same level as them now. After confirming the candidates for regiment commanders, Yu Qianzhou continued to host the meeting. He ordered Guan Yu and the 5 regiment commanders to start selecting the battalion commanders from the original Hero Special Forces. The criteria for selection were: first, the person had outstanding performance in the Spirit Stone Mine robbery. Second, the person's cultivation level. Finally, the person's commanding ability under the same conditions. After an intense discussion, Guan Yu and the 5 regiment commanders finally confirmed the candidates for 3 battalion commanders. A total of 15 battalion commanders were promoted. After deciding on the candidates for battalion commanders, the meeting continued to expand. They screened the candidates for company commanders again. After some discussion, the 45th company commander was revealed. After the meeting ended, Guan Yu gathered all the team members in the field. The thousands of people who were captured listened at the back. The women under Bai Suzhen were guarding the perimeter. They looked inside curiously, wondering what was going on. Yu Qianqiu stood on one side of the stage and looked at the group of people below. His emotions surged. The more people there were, the better. Didn't a great man in his previous life say, "There is strength in numbers"? The more people there were, the better it would be in the cultivation world. Chief Instructor Guan Yu stood in the middle of the stage and began to announce the orders. Behind him stood the 5 regiment commanders in a row. When the names of the 15 battalion commanders were called out, there was a warm applause below the stage. It was the same when the 45th Company commander was appointed. After the orders were announced, Guan Yu announced the process of the appointment. Those who were not selected but had similar cultivation levels were instantly annoyed. If they had known this would happen, they would have risked their lives during the robbery. Sigh! How enviable! It was a great honor to be personally appointed by the head of state. The women under Bai Suzhen looked at the members who were promoted, and their faces were filled with admiration. The team members also accepted the congratulations from their teammates excitedly. The enthusiastic atmosphere made the captives envious. For a moment, the entire field was filled with applause and congratulations. In the end, Guan Yu ordered the 5 regiment commanders again. He gave them half a day to confirm and report the platoon commanders and squad leaders of their subordinates as soon as possible. He also assigned the thousands of captives to their respective subordinates. The 5 regiment commanders accepted the order and the intense work of assigning people began. As for the person belonging to Chen Feng, who was promoted from platoon commander to battalion commander, he picked 3 old team members who had not been promoted to be company commanders. The 3 old team members immediately rolled their eyes and sent him off. They were not too willing to go to the logistics department. If they went to the logistics department, there would be no more battles to fight and the next chance to gain merit would be gone. That person did not care so much. He laughed and said, "From today onwards, we are brothers in hardship. Don't be long-winded and follow me." Therefore, he took over 300 captives and left with Chen Feng dejectedly. After the personnel were allocated, Yu Qianqiu first ordered the construction of a Utopia Hero Monument. On this day every year, it would be used to remember the members who had died in battle for Utopia. In the future, as long as there were members who had died in the line of duty, they would be buried in the cemetery behind the monument for everyone to pay their respects. In the following days, Yu Qianqiu was still very busy. He had to implement the marriage policy that he had promised everyone as soon as possible. He also had to expand and renovate the barracks, as well as the treatment of officers at all levels, as well as the training plan for the future. Utopia began an unprecedented construction project. Other than building barracks, they also had to build villas of different levels for officers at the battalion level and above. Yu Qianqiu's idea was that since there were so many levels, he should let his subordinates who had reached a certain level enjoy a certain level of treatment. Chapter 230. He was so busy in Utopia that he did not know that the cultivation world outside was in an uproar. The 21 spiritual stone mines of the Daluo sect and Ong Kwangtsung had been attacked on the same day. None of the guards or miners were left alive. Both sects only found out about this a few days later. The entire Daluo sect was shocked, as was the entire upper echelon. After all, it was the second largest sect on the righteous path. When had it ever suffered such a loss? Therefore, the entire Daluo sect took action. First, they sent a large number of guards to protect the spiritual stone mines. Then, they searched for the culprit and informed the Cultivation Alliance, requesting the various sects in the Cultivation Alliance to help find the culprit. Ong Kwangtsung was furious. Their spiritual stone mines had already been robbed by the Phantom Palace once, and this time, the culprit was even worse. They had looted all their mines, not leaving a single person alive. During this time, the Blue Light sect had been in trouble again and again. No one knew what bad luck they had. First, more than 10 disciples were killed. Then, a dignified sect leader was killed. Then, all the spirit stone mines were looted. The most embarrassing thing was that Ong Kwangtsung had already suffered great losses in the battle with the Blood Demon Palace. They did not have enough manpower to begin with. Now that they had lost so many people, if they were to send another group to guard the 6 spiritual stone mines, Ong Kwangtsung would be in danger if someone took the opportunity to cause trouble. But they could not just throw away the 6 spiritual stone mines for nothing, could they? This was the foundation that supported Ong Kwang-tsung's foothold. Without the spiritual stone mines, their title as the 6th largest sect on the righteous path would probably be lost. In desperation, Ong Kwang-tsung informed the Cultivation Alliance about this and requested the various sects on the righteous path to help. Yu Qianzhou's attack had indeed hurt Ong Kwang-tsung's lifeline. However, he was not in the mood to care about this. He was busy building a house in Utopia. When the news reached the Cultivation Alliance, all the sects were shocked. Only then did they realize that the 2 sects were attacked on the same day. Especially from the small black flags left in the 21 spirit stone mines, it was clearly done by the same group of people. But who could have such strength? There were 6,000 to 7,000 people in these mines. Not a single person was left alive in a single day. It was simply unimaginable. Such a large-scale looting operation would require at least a few thousand people to act at the same time, right? With so many people being mobilized in the cultivation world, how could the sects not know about it? This was especially true for the Daluo sect's 15 spirit stone mines, each of which was guarded by a Tribulation Transcendent stage expert. Didn't the murderer also have the ability to send at least 15 experts at the crossing calamity stage? The only thing they could be sure of was that this incident had been meticulously planned. Otherwise, the 2 factions wouldn't have only received the news a few days later. The 2 golden words on the black flag, hero. What did it mean? Could it be that some sects were deliberately trying to deceive people? The sects of the Cultivation Alliance were shocked, and everyone began to feel insecure. They all secretly speculated that if such a force came for their sects, would they be able to resist it? No matter how hard they thought, they couldn't imagine that Yu Qianzhou had led a few hundred people to raid 21 spirit stone mines in a single day just by relying on the miraculous effect of the golden bead. After all the suspicions, the sects of the Cultivation Alliance who were discussing in the 100 Flowers Valley all targeted the diabolism. From the fact that all the people who were attacked this time were from the righteous path, it could be seen that the murderer was obviously not interested in the righteous path. There were also people who suddenly had a strange suspicion. Could this have been done by Yu Qianzhou? During this period of time, the Daluo sect and Ong Kwang-tsung were wantonly trying to arrest him. Could it be that Yu Qianzhou was deliberately taking revenge? Didn't they say that he had appeared in Swallow City with hundreds of men in black? As soon as this conclusion came out, everyone thought that it was possible, but in the end, it was still uncertain. Unless Yu Qianzhou had another 20 teams of hundreds of men in black, it would be more likely. Otherwise, it would be impossible for him to make such a big move. Even if it was Yu Qianzhou who did it, someone must have lent them to him. Who in the cultivation world would lend so many people to a core formation stage cultivator? Then there was only one possibility. The diabolism. Back in the 100 Flowers Valley, didn't they see that Yu Qianzhou was very familiar with the people from the diabolism? Of course, this was just the speculation of the various sections. But no matter what, everyone still locked the culprit on the diabolism. Only the diabolism would do such a thing to the righteous path. There were many people in the Cultivation Alliance, so it didn't take long for this matter to spread throughout the cultivation world. Almost everyone was talking about the mysterious organization called Hero. For a time, the name Hero was known to almost everyone in the cultivation world. Because of the conclusion of the righteous path, the Diabolism Alliance in the 100 Flowers Valley also gathered together. Zhou Wuyuan of the 10,000 Demons looked around at the elder in charge of the various diabolism sects and said in a deep voice, "I wonder which sect here did such a big deal? This old man really admires you. Even I, the 10,000 Demons, have never done something like this. Since you did it, you might as well stand up and say something. Everyone here is from the diabolism. Such a big matter should give everyone a good idea so that they can prepare, right?" As he said this, Zhou Wuyuan's gaze swept past the elder in charge of the Blood Demon Palace, Wen Zhongping from time to time. Most of the elder in charge of the diabolism did the same. After all, the Blood Demon Palace had fought with Ong Kwang-tsung before. And this time, Ong Kwang-tsung was the unlucky one. It was impossible for the Blood Demon Palace not to be suspicious. Everyone was almost certain that the one who did this to the righteous path was definitely someone from the diabolism. When Zhongping saw that everyone was looking at him strangely, Zhou Wuyuan's expression was even more obvious. It was as if he was saying, "It's already like this. What's the point of pretending? Your Blood Demon Palace should just admit it." Bang! Wen Zhongping slammed the table and stood up angrily. Xueqi, why are you looking at me like that? Are you suspecting that this was done by the Blood Demon Palace? Hee hee. Xueqi smiled non-committally. Wen Zhongping, why are you so agitated? I just saw that you seemed to be in good spirits today, so I took a few more glances. Didn't you notice that everyone was looking at you? His words were clearly saying that everyone suspected that this was done by the Blood Demon Palace. Good spirits, my ass. Wen Zhongping's furious gaze swept over them, but they all looked away as if nothing had happened. This immediately infuriated him. If this matter had been done by the Blood Demon Palace, then he would have admitted to it. However, it was not done by the Blood Demon Palace. How could he admit to it? This was practically an unprecedented injustice. However, to be able to live to this age and sit in this position, how could he be so easily wronged by a few words from others? Wen Zhongping restrained his anger and suddenly stared at Xueqi as he cackled. If my Blood Demon Palace were to make such a big move, I'm sure it wouldn't be hidden from everyone here. To be able to do such a thing without anyone knowing, in the demonic path, it's simply... Hee hee. 10,000 demons is indeed a good move. Xueqi was stunned. He saw that everyone was suddenly looking at him with a thoughtful expression. He immediately said angrily, Bull**T. If this was done by the 10,000 demons, then I, Xueqi, will die a horrible death. Wen Zhongping, if you have the guts, make an oath too. Let's do it. Wen Zhongping looked around at his people and swore, if this was done by the Blood Demon Palace, then I, Wen Zhongping, will die a horrible death as well. Now that the two of them had even sworn oaths, there was no reason for the others to suspect anything. However, this was something that even the Blood Demon Palace couldn't avoid being discovered. If other smaller sects had done it, they naturally wouldn't be able to hide it. Therefore, everyone racked their brains, but still couldn't figure out who did it. Logically speaking, who else but the Diabolism would do such a good thing? Everyone! Xueqi suddenly stood up and looked around. He frowned. Let's not talk about who did this for now. Without a doubt, the righteous path has their eyes on the Diabolism. Everyone, send the news back to your sects as soon as possible, so that they can prepare in advance. Therefore, not long after, the entire Diabolism seemed to be facing a great enemy. The righteous path also became nervous when they heard the news. The righteous path and the Diabolism seemed to be on the verge of breaking out. Daluo sect and Ong Kwangsung also lost interest in competing with Yu Qianchou. Maintaining the survival of their sects was their top priority. Chapter 231. The only person in the outside world who knew that the Spirit Stone mine had been attacked was the Allure Temptress. However, she had also gotten the wrong idea. She thought that Yu Qianchou had sent out 21 teams at the same time. When she received reports from the 15 elders that experts at the late-stage Tribulation stage had appeared in all 15 places, the Allure Temptress was shocked. Didn't that mean that there were 15 experts at the late-stage Tribulation stage? She could not help but guess who the heroes behind Yu Qianchou were. Why had she never heard of them before? In the Wu family's ancestral hall, the heads of the 4 families gathered together. The 4 of them could not help but be concerned about the major events in the cultivation world. After some guesses, Wu Sihai suddenly laughed and said, if I'm not wrong, the one who did this might be Yu Qianchou, whom we're looking for. The power behind this kid is really unfathomable. The other 3 family heads asked him why he was so sure. Wu Sihai smiled and said, the Daluo sect and Ong Kwangsung can't find out who did it. The entire cultivation world can't find out either. Furthermore, the 2 sects happen to provoke that kid. I'm afraid that kid has something to do with this. I'm afraid only that kid has the ability to do something like this. Regardless of whether the outside world's guesses were right or wrong, to Yu Qianchou, what was done was already in the past. He was not in the mood to care about it now. Half a month later, a large number of buildings had been built in Utopia. It was naturally because of the 4,000 to 5,000 extraordinary cultivators. Otherwise, it would not have been so fast. After some initial constructive guidance, Yu Qianchou did not bother with the details anymore. He left the details to his subordinates. At night, Yu Qianchou thought of something and felt a little depressed. He stood alone in front of Misty Peak and looked at the thousands of people who were busy with their work. He could not help but sigh deeply. Every time he was in danger or in trouble, he would always need Bai Suzhen's help. As a man, it was too much of a blow to his pride to always need a woman to protect him. Originally, he thought that with a large number of spirit stones, he would be able to rapidly increase his cultivation level. However, after he entered the core formation stage, the speed at which he could refine the true essence in his body was too slow. Others were troubled by the lack of sufficient spiritual energy, but he had enough spiritual energy, yet he felt that the speed at which he condensed his core was too slow. Was it because he didn't know how lucky he was? Standing at the edge of the cliff, Yu Qianqiu shook his head and smiled bitterly. He sat down cross-legged with his eyes closed and examined the tiny core in his dantian. His Jin Yuan was attached to the core, and strands of it kept pouring into it. It was condensing at a speed that was difficult to see clearly. At this speed, how long would it take for the core to become the size of a middle-stage core formation cultivator? Even if he cultivated day and night, it would still take him close to 10 years. In the eyes of others, this speed was already unreasonably fast. However, if she only reached the middle stage of the core formation realm after 10 years, wouldn't she have to ask her sister to protect her when she was in trouble? And this protection would take another 10 years. Besides, even if he did reach the middle stage of the core formation stage, what would he do to those old guys at the crossing calamity stage? Then how many years would it take to reach the late stage of the core formation realm? After the core broke the nascent soul, it would take an unknown number of years to reach the nascent soul realm. After that, she would have to slowly climb from the middle stage to the crossing tribulation realm. By the time she reached the late stage of the crossing tribulation realm, she would be over 100 years old. And this was under the condition that she thought everything would be smooth sailing. In reality, the hurdle between each stage had blocked many cultivators. It would be good if she could smoothly break through to the late stage of the crossing tribulation realm before she was 200 years old. Yu Qianqiu opened his eyes and stood up. Speechless, he looked up at the starry sky and sighed again. In fact, there were some things that he could also think of. For cultivators who could cultivate to the crossing tribulation realm, the sects would always provide them with spirit stones. He didn't believe that, for cultivators who had reached the privileged class, the sects would really provide them with spirit stones as they said on the surface. The reason was very obvious. At the point where they could set the rules of the game, who would make things difficult for him? From this, it could be imagined that the advantage of having an abundance of spirit stones was only in the early stage. In the early stage, his cultivation speed was much faster than the middle and lower level cultivators of the various sections. But once he reached the crossing tribulation realm, his cultivation speed would definitely be similar to the upper level cultivators of the various sections. This was because no matter how many spirit stones you had, the speed at which you could refine true essence was obvious. Unless someone could break through the stage of refining true essence. Why was Bai Chongqun invincible before he was 300 years old? Why was he able to create his own cultivation method? Yu Qianqiu looked at the sky full of stars and suddenly remembered the painting that he saw in the Wu clan's ancestral hall. In the painting, Bai Chongqun was standing on a cliff with his hands behind his back, looking up at the stars. Wasn't it the same as what he was doing now? Could it be that the sky full of stars was hiding some secret? The feeling of heaven? Yu Qianqiu muttered this sentence. From the inscription on the painting, it seemed that the phrase that Bai Chongqun often said was, the feeling of heaven. Wu Sihai also said that Bai Chongqun's cultivation was a different path, and that he had comprehended the heavenly Tao. What was the heavenly Tao? It was too illusory. Although he didn't know if it was true that the old demon was invincible within 3 moves, just based on the fact that he had reached the soul formation stage and lived for more than 2,000 years, these 2 points were enough to be admired. The stars were related to the heavenly Tao? Yu Qianqiu stood on the cliff and raised his head to look at the sky. The night sky was sparkling, and the sky was filled with little stars. He didn't know how many times his eyes had been dazzled by the stars. Yu Qianqiu steeled his heart and thought to himself, I'm going to find out what relationship this star has with the illusory heavenly Tao. One day, I'm going to be invincible under the heavens. The night dew was deep, and Yu Qianqiu's clothes were already drenched in a thin layer of cold dew. However, he didn't know that on the roof of the ethereal palace, Bai Suzhen was staring at him with a puzzled expression. Seeing that he seemed to be competing with the night sky, she would also look up at the sky from time to time, but she didn't find anything special. The sky was turning white, and the stars in the sky gradually faded. Yu Qianqiu raised his hand and massaged the back of his neck, which was a little sore. After working hard for a whole night, he still couldn't figure out anything. He didn't even know if this bullshit heavenly Tao was real or not. He could only dejectedly stop his cultivation and return to the ethereal palace to catch up on his sleep. However, people were like this. Once they were interested in something, it was enough to attract people for a period of time. At least, it would be like this until they were completely tired of it. Therefore, Yu Qianqiu spent a few consecutive nights watching the stars on the cliff, trying to figure out something. In the end, he spent more than 10 nights watching the stars. However, it seemed that he wasn't fated with the heavenly Tao. Apart from the slight movement of the stars in the night sky every day, there was nothing else. Using the knowledge from his previous life to understand, it seemed that it was due to the rotation and revolution of the stars. After a few more nights, Yu Qianqiu really couldn't stand it anymore. Not only did he look at the stars at night, no matter what he did during the day, his mind would be filled with stars swaying in front of his eyes. He could almost memorize the stars in the sky. He was a little strange, which made those who were concerned about him a little anxious, but he said that he was fine. At night, Yu Qianqiu habitually walked up the cliff. Just as he reached the edge of the cliff, Yu Qianqiu gave himself a fierce slap, waking himself up. Damn it! If this continued, he would become crazy. Perhaps that whatever Tan Fei drew was just a Bai Chongqun-style stargazing map, but he took it seriously and foolishly stayed here to watch the stars every day. If it was really useful, why would the 4 great clans still need to do business? They would have long been watching the stars every day. Stupid as can be. Yu Qianqiu scolded himself, feeling as if he had suddenly come to a realization. He thought to himself, if I have this time, I might as well refine a few good flying swords. I still haven't used the mysterious golden sand I bought last time. Immediately, a flying sword shot out, carrying him down the deep valley. He let the cold wind blow on his face, wanting to wake himself up a little more. When he reached the bottom, the first thing he ran over was to see what Chen Feng was doing. In the end, Chen Feng was deeply immersed in his own Tao, guarding an alchemy furnace, stubbornly refusing to come to his senses. Yu Qianqiu didn't disturb him. He inspected the bright red and scorching hot underground. Seeing that the logistics department was operating in an orderly manner, he clearly didn't need to worry about anything. Thus, he found a cave with intense earth fire and burrowed into it, preparing to personally refine the weapon. Out of thin air, he summoned the 100 flying swords he used, then took out the mystic gold sand and placed it to the side. The violent earth fire in front of him made his face a little hot. However, with his current cultivation, he could still withstand this little bit of heat, as long as he didn't jump into the fire to be roasted. When refining a weapon, the first thing to do was to be free of distracting thoughts. Otherwise, it would be easy to refine a waste. It was fine to waste a little normally, but it would be a pity to waste the mystic gold sand that he had spent 500,000 high-grade spirit stones to buy. Exhaling and concentrating, his state of mind should have gradually stabilized, but unknowingly, the sky full of stars that had been deeply engraved in his mind for the past few days came out again. He didn't know what was going on. Being in the cave with his cultivation, he should have only felt a little hot on the surface of his body, but because of the sky full of stars that suddenly appeared in his mind, it seemed to subconsciously guide the true essence in his body to do some strange circulation. The heat that should have been blocked outside of his body was actually drawn in through the pores on the surface of his body, and integrated into the true essence in his body to circulate. His body immediately became warm, and the heat outside of his body didn't seem to have that scorching feeling anymore. While in a daze, Yu Qianqiu suddenly came to his senses. It didn't matter that he woke up. The strange phenomenon of the true essence circulating in his body immediately stopped, as if it had never happened. However, the heat contained in the true essence in his body was an indiscernible fact. Yu Qianqiu's body suddenly trembled. Could this have something to do with the sky full of stars that appeared in his mind? Chapter 232. Could this be the so-called heavenly Tao? Yu Qianqiu was a little excited. He had never seen such a phenomenon before when he was refining here. It must be the after-effect of looking at the stars during this period of time. After pondering a little, he was not very sure. He immediately suppressed his excitement and focused on the heat energy contained in the true essence that had just been absorbed into his body. Although the subtle heat energy was extremely small, he could still discover its existence if he paid attention. It was mixed with the white true essence in his body and appeared to be abnormally active. The bright red little guy was dancing like a fairy and was very cute. But because of the existence of this little guy, he was actually not afraid of the heat outside. Yu Qianqiu began to guide the true essence in his meridians according to his usual cultivation method. When the true essence in his body had completed a cycle, his dantian was like a filter. All the true essence that had entered and exited the meridians were like fish returning to the sea. Once the little guy that was mixed with the true essence entered his dantian, it was like a fish returning to the sea. It happily swam towards the core and absorbed the white core. Soon, it disappeared without a trace, as if it had drilled into the core. What was going on? Yu Qianqiu was stunned. He checked the true essence in his body and found that all the little guys had run into the white core. Damn it! There shouldn't be any problems, right? If this father's core was damaged, all my cultivation would be wasted. After careful observation, the white core was still quietly suspended in the center of his dantian. There was no abnormal reaction, and the yuan qi was also operating normally. It was fine just like that? While Yu Qianqiu was puzzled, he suddenly began to feel the scorching heat on the surface of his body again. Looking at the surging earth fire in front of him, Yu Qianqiu really wanted to do what he did just now and absorb the little guy inside. But what happened just now was purely an unconscious action. No matter how he thought about it, he couldn't figure out the path of the true essence's circulation. Yu Qianqiu glanced at the flying sword and the mystic gold sand on the ground. How could he still calm down to practice this thing? He had finally figured out a clue, so he couldn't give it up so easily. It was more important to become as awesome as Bai Chongqun. That way, he wouldn't have to rely on a woman to protect him in the future. With a wave of his hand, he collected all the items. He dusted off his long robe and sat down. However, the rock below was really a little hot, so he didn't care too much. As long as he didn't die from the heat, it was fine. Yu Qianqiu looked at the raging fire in front of him and took a deep breath of the scorching air. He slowly closed his eyes and cleared his mind of distracting thoughts. He didn't want to think about anything else other than the star chart that he had memorized recently. Gradually, he forgot about the scorching heat under his butt and the scorching heat in the cave. It was as if he was immersed in the scene of looking at the stars at the top of the misty peak. He couldn't feel any heat, only the cool night breeze at the top of the mountain and the twinkling stars in the sky. It was so beautiful and enchanting. In the deep starry sky, the stars were still the same stars. He could see them every night. Some seemed to be fixed in the same position forever, while some seemed to be changing position every night. It might not be possible to find anything by looking at it separately, but if he looked at the position of the stars for a few nights, he would find that these stars seemed to have a certain orbit. If he thought about it abstractly, could those fixed stars be regarded as the human body's bones, flesh, and meridians? And could those stars with orbits be regarded as the body's genuine qi? The star chart in his mind was very complicated. Once he got into the state, Yu Qianqiu found something very interesting. The stars in the north, south, east, west, and center seemed to have their own orbit cycle. He couldn't remember the other directions very clearly. After all, it was not easy to remember the complexity of the starry sky. However, because he stood on the cliff every night to observe the stars in the south, he could remember the changes of the stars in the south more clearly. The stars in the south seemed to have a big cycle of changes. However, the observation time was short, so it was impossible to grasp the changes. But if he looked at some of the stars in the south, he could clearly see an orbit cycle every 7 days. Noticing these changes, Yu Qianqiu carefully recalled the orbit of the stars, trying to remember it. Suddenly, the genuine qi in his body began to circulate on its own, implying the changing orbit of the star chart in his mind. Yu Qianqiu felt the changes in the genuine qi in his body and woke up. He was slightly startled, but was immediately overjoyed. So it was like this. Not daring to have too many distracting thoughts, he immediately closed his eyes to eliminate them. Following the changing orbit of the star chart, he consciously guided the genuine qi in his body to circulate. The high temperature in the surroundings gradually decreased. Not wanting to open his eyes and be distracted, he released his divine sense to check the changes in his surroundings. Sure enough, in the raging and tyrannical earth fire, many tiny yellow dots that were invisible to the naked eye began to surge out and pounce towards him. Perhaps these little guys could only be seen by releasing their divine sense to carefully look. One by one, The little guys burrowed into the meridians in his body through his pores, and began to circulate together with the genuine qi. Every time it circulated a cycle, the genuine qi would circulate from his dantian, and those little guys would happily pounce towards the white core. Yu Qianzhou couldn't figure out what was going on, but he really wanted to find out whether it was a good or bad thing for these little guys, who should be called fire elements, to merge with his core. As he gradually became familiar with the changing orbit of the star chart, Yu Qianzhou was already able to directly control the circulation of genuine qi. As a result, he discovered that as the circulation speed increased, the speed at which the fire elements in the earth fire surged towards him also increased. In the end, they were all absorbed by his core. At first, he was a little afraid. He really didn't know what would happen if so many fire elements rushed into his core. However, the subsequent reaction made him happy. As more and more fire elements rushed into his core, the white core actually became slightly hot. The genuine qi in his dantian was being roasted, and the speed at which it adhered to and condensed into the core seemed to increase. Although it was almost invisible, Yu Qianzhou still discovered that the speed at which the core was condensing was increasing. Damn! There was actually such an effect. Yu Qianzhou became excited again. Previously, because the speed at which he refined genuine qi and condensed his core was too slow, he estimated that it would take at least 10 years for him to break through to the middle stage of core formation. Now, it seemed that there was a great possibility that he could break through earlier. This was truly the will of the heavens. After his ecstasy, he thought of a problem. The 4 directions of the stars in the sky each had their own orbit. But why would the southern orbit absorb the fire elements when converted into genuine qi? Why didn't it absorb other things? Could it be that the 5 directions of the star chart each had its own effect? Could it be? He suddenly remembered a saying about the 5 elements in his previous life. It was that the 5 elements were divided into metal, wood, water, fire, and earth. The 5 elements corresponded to 5 directions. Metal to the west, wood to the east, water to the north, fire to the south, and earth to the center. Wasn't the star chart of the south the star chart he was using? Could it be that the 5 directions of the star chart could separately absorb the 5 elements of metal, wood, water, fire, and earth? Since there was such a saying, then what he was experiencing now was not a coincidence. There must be a reason behind it. He needed to find an opportunity to understand the other 4 directions of the star chart and see if there were any other effects. As for now, naturally, it was more important to increase his cultivation level. The corner of Yu Qianzhou's mouth twitched, revealing a trace of a smile. He began to increase the speed at which his genuine qi revolved and crazily absorbed the fire elements from the earth fire. In the alchemy room not far from Yu Qianzhou, Chen Feng looked at the pill in his hand that had a faint halo and laughed out loud. He could finally be like boss and concoct such a high-quality pill. Hearing the commotion inside, one of Chen Feng's subordinates walked in. Seeing the pill in Chen Feng's hand, he immediately cupped his hands and bowed. "Congratulations, Chief Chen. You have finally concocted a high-quality pill." Chief Chen's title was given to him by Yu Qianzhou. It meant that he was the person in charge of logistics, so he was called Chief Chen. Chen Feng's subordinates also called him this. Yes. It wasn't easy. Chen Feng sighed and turned to ask, "How many days did I stay in the alchemy room this time?" 13 days, the person replied. 13 days? Now that you mention it, I am a little hungry. Chen Feng rubbed his shriveled stomach. He had not reached the core formation stage yet, so it was a little unbearable to not eat for a long time. Tossing the pill in his hand, Chen Feng smiled proudly and said, "I'll go see if boss is here. Just because I concocted a high-quality pill, he has to get me something good to eat." "Chief Chen, wait a minute. Boss is here. He came the second day after you concocted the pill and has been staying in a cave." The person knew that the boss he was talking about was the leader. In Utopia, only a few people had the right to call him that. Chen Feng frowned and thought to himself, "What is boss doing? He has actually stayed here for more than 10 days. How rare." He waved his hand and said, "Bring me to him." Chapter 233. That person brought Chen Feng to the cave where Yu Qianzhou stayed. There was a red light flashing inside, and no one knew what was going on. With Chen Feng leading the way, that person dared to go in. When the two entered and saw the scene inside, they were dumbfounded. The red light in the cave was rippling, as if there was something wandering in the air. The temperature was extraordinarily high. Chen Feng and his subordinates stood there for a while, and suddenly felt like they were being roasted by the high temperature. With their cultivation, it seemed like they couldn't withstand it. Yu Qianchou sat on the ground with his legs crossed, naked. There was nothing on his body, and his black hair fluttered in the wind. He sat there like a burning flame, and the red light in the cave was coming from his body. The temperature inside was too high. The two stayed for a while longer, and suddenly felt thirsty. They couldn't bear it anymore, so they had to leave. "Stand guard here, and don't let anyone in," Chen Feng said to his subordinate and left. The situation was a little strange, and he needed to find someone who could make the decision. Not long after, Bai Suzhen hurriedly followed him. Seeing Yu Qianchou sitting there naked, Bai Suzhen looked a little embarrassed. She didn't know what to do. Fortunately, Chen Feng was afraid of the high temperature and didn't dare to come in again, or else it would be even more embarrassing. She didn't know what was going on, so she walked closer to observe. After walking to Yu Qianchou's side, Bai Suzhen was shocked. The closer she got to Yu Qianchou, the higher the temperature. When she was a few steps away from him, even with her cultivation at the end of the tribulation stage, she couldn't withstand the high temperature, so she had to turn around and retreat. Even she couldn't withstand the high temperature, so how could he sit there as if nothing was wrong? However, from the faint smile on Yu Qianchou's face, she could tell that he seemed to have gained something, so she shouldn't worry. Thinking about how Yu Qianchou would stare at the starry sky every night, she guessed that he was cultivating a strange spell. With confidence in her heart, she retreated out of the cave. Bai Suzhen instructed Chen Feng, "He is fine. Send someone to stand guard here. Don't let anyone disturb him." Chen Feng respectfully agreed. The former quickly walked back. She was eager to know what secrets were hidden in the starry night sky. At this moment, Yu Qianchou was immersed in his own world and didn't pay attention to anything happening in the outside world. His core was growing at a visible speed, and he believed that the middle stage of the core formation realm wouldn't be far away. Not long after Bai Suzhen left, 2 purple best quality spirit stones appeared in his palm. The majestic spiritual qi in the spirit stones turned into a trickle and flowed into his body through his hands, transforming into white Zhen qi, which was then transformed into white liquid Zhan yuan, which was constantly replenishing the consumed Zhan yuan in his body. At this moment, the core formation seemed to have absorbed enough fire elements. The fire elements that entered the dantian no longer entered the core formation and began to rush towards the walls of the dantian. Yu Qianchou could clearly feel that the fire elements were being absorbed through the walls of the dantian and began to spread towards his internal organs. Then, it continued to spread to his meridians, limbs and bones, all the way to the surface of his body, hair and skin. Yu Qianchou was somewhat surprised by this change, but he wasn't afraid. This was because he could feel that the fire elements didn't have any malicious intent towards him. Instead, he faintly felt that they were connected. "Since the little ones like it, then come. I want to see how big of a surprise you can give me." With a thought, he sped up the absorption of the spiritual qi from the best quality spirit stones in his hand. The spiritual qi entered his body and was quickly transformed into Zhan yuan. The original purple light of the best quality spirit stone immediately dimmed. When all the purple light was used up, the spirit stone was crushed into ashes and fell from his palm. After the spiritual qi was completely transformed into Zhan yuan, the circulation within his body increased to the limit. The fire elements in the earth fire were continuously absorbed into his body and were stored in his dantian. He didn't know how much time had passed, but when the fire elements filled his whole body, including his meridians and dantian, his body felt as if it was about to burst. He didn't dare to absorb anymore and stopped the circulation of the magic art. Looking at the core formation in his dantian, it wasn't far from the middle core formation stage. Yu Qianchou was wild with joy. He didn't expect that the fire elements in the core formation stage would have such a miraculous effect. Even if he didn't cultivate, he was still constantly refining the Zhan yuan to solidify and enrich himself. At this rate, his cultivation would break through to the middle core formation stage in a few days. Yu Qianchou opened his eyes and let out a breath. He slowly stood up, feeling that his body was full of energy and extremely comfortable. He probably didn't even know that at the moment he opened his eyes, a ball of leaping flames flashed in each of his pitch-black pupils. It was a very strange sight to behold. "Ah!" Yu Qianqiu was about to leave the cave when he suddenly found his abnormal state. His expression immediately twitched. Damn it! What's going on? How come I'm naked? His gaze fell on the place where he just sat and he suddenly understood. He was afraid that it was related to the fire elements he absorbed. There was a layer of ash on the ground where he just sat. He touched his scattered hair and found that the crown that was originally on top of his head was also gone. It seemed that other than his body, everything else was gone. The crown was made of fine copper. How could the fire elements be so powerful? Yu Qianqiu couldn't help but be afraid. It didn't matter if he was naked now, but if one day he was suddenly burned in front of everyone, it would be terrible. Yu Qianqiu looked at the entrance of the cave. Fortunately, there was no one. He quickly took a set of clothes out of thin air and put them on. After he felt a little safer, he pondered about the fire elements in his body. He didn't know if such a situation would happen again in the future. He couldn't let these little guys do as they pleased. He must control them. Otherwise, if he was not careful, he would accidentally run around naked. How could he let that happen? He revolved his true essence and tried to control them. The result was that the fire elements were very obedient. They went wherever he wanted them to go without any resistance. I wonder what will happen if I force them out of my body? Yu Qianqiu stretched out a finger and slowly forced out some fire elements. Only to hear a puff sound, a small flame stood on his finger and burned. Yu Qianqiu was shocked. Don't turn my finger into a grilled sausage. He quickly patted and blew on it, trying to extinguish it. Ha! Yu Qianqiu was surprised. Not to mention that this flame couldn't be extinguished. Why didn't I feel any pain when it burned on my hand? Not even a little heat? How could this be? After his state of mind calmed down, he immediately discovered that this flame was abnormally beautiful. It was much darker than ordinary flames. Moreover, it had a faint feeling that it was connected to his mind. With this feeling, he tried to revolve his true essence to control it. After a try, he found that he could really control it. As he retracted his true essence, the flame gradually shrunk and disappeared back into his finger. Tsk tisk. Yu Qianqiu repeatedly praised. The fire elements were forced out again, and the flame appeared again. After a while, it went back into his body. After a few attempts, he found that the more fire elements he used, the bigger the flame would be. Moreover, he could easily control it. After understanding the mystery, Yu Qianqiu suddenly clenched his fists. His whole body suddenly emitted a raging fire, and he stood in the raging fire unscathed. Looking at the clothes on his body, with the protection of his true essence, they were indeed undamaged. He could completely control them, so there was no need to worry. In the fire, Yu Qianqiu looked around the cave. His eyes fell on a stone wall. Suddenly, a small flame appeared on his finger. With a flash of red light, a charred hole appeared on the stone wall. Chapter 234. Yu Qianqiu's mouth was slightly agape with a look of disbelief. It must be known that the stone walls of this cave had been roasted by the blazing fire below for many years without much change. Yet, a small ball of fire that he had casually flicked out was able to silently burn a hole in the stone wall. Wasn't this a little too powerful? He released his divine sense to investigate the small hole that was burnt out. It was at least 1 meter deep. Yu Qianqiu let out a breath of cold air. It was just a casual flick from him, but it actually had such power. Then, looking at the armor-like flame coat that enveloped his body, he raised a blazing fist and punched towards the wall. Zhan Yuan quickly shot out with a fireball. Pang! A large hole appeared in the wall. Puff, puff, puff. The flames that had been compressed by Zhan Yuan shot out from his 10 fingers like a storm. Immediately, the cave was filled with charred holes. Amazing! Yu Qianqiu smiled with satisfaction. This was a good attack method. However, it seemed like the fire element stored in his body would decrease with every release. The commotion inside alerted the guards outside. 2 of his subordinates jumped in with swords in hand. When they saw Yu Qianqiu covered in flames, their faces were filled with shock. After pausing for a while, they saluted together and said, "Leader! There's nothing here. You guys go out." "That's right. Fill this water tank with water," Yu Qianqiu said with a smile in the flames. "Yes." The 2 respectfully retreated. Not long after, Water flowed in from a ditch that was dug out in the stone wall. After a while, a pool in the corner of the wall was filled with water. Yu Qianqiu retracted the flames on his body. He took out his flying sword and the mystical golden sand. He held the flying sword in one hand and the mystical golden sand in the other. He released his Zhen Yuan and forced the two items to float above his palm. Suddenly, two balls of red demonic flames appeared in his palm and wrapped around the flying sword and the mystical golden sand. The two items quickly turned into two balls of black and gold liquid. The two balls of flames immediately merged into one, and the two balls of liquid also fused together. Yu Qianqiu held up the flame with one hand. The flame wrapped around the liquid in his palm rotated rapidly. After thoroughly mixing the flying sword liquid and the mystical golden sand liquid, the flame was pulled up in his palm and elongated like a tornado. The metal liquid also gradually elongated, and a long sword began to take shape in the rotating flame. Suddenly, the shape of the flame changed and instantly turned into a fiery long sword. It gradually shrunk in size from the outside to the inside, and the liquid that was wrapped in it was compressed into a flying sword. Yu Qianqiu stared at the sword and waited for a while before nodding slightly. The long sword's flame-shaped coat quickly retracted from the hilt and retracted back into the palm of the hand from the sword tip. Yu Qianqiu cast a few spells at it. This was a necessary spell to refine a flying sword. Otherwise, no matter how good the sword was, it would not be able to become a royal flying sword. With a wave of his hand, the long sword flew into the air and stabbed straight into the water trough that was filled with water. Fart! A sharp sound rang out. After the water receded, the heat of the long sword was fixed, and it was directly inserted into the bottom of the pool. Yu Qianqiu reached into the water to grab the sword hilt and pulled it out. He bent his finger and flicked the sword. Wang! The long sword let out a crisp dragon roar. The layer of black impurities wrapped around the sword was shaken off, revealing a flying sword with a dark gold color. Yu Qianqiu flicked the sword twice and listened to the buzzing sound. He nodded in satisfaction and then casually slashed at the stone wall. With a light sound, the long sword penetrated into the stone wall and swept out again. It was as effortless as a knife cutting through tofu. Good sword. Yu Qianqiu gently stroked the sword and couldn't help but praise it. The most important thing in refining was the balance of the materials. Alchemy was also the same. The second thing was superb refining skills. Although he didn't have any superb refining skills, with his ability to control fire, he should be able to match the materials. His divine sense locked onto the flying sword in his hand and flew freely in the cave. Finally, with a dong sound, the sword was nailed into the stone wall. Still in high spirits, he picked up the flying swords and mysterious gold sand on the ground and started refining them one by one. When all the flying swords were mixed with mysterious gold sand and refined again, he found that the amount of mysterious gold sand was enough to refine another 100 flying swords. Back at the auction house, he knew that 10 kilograms of mysterious gold sand was enough to refine 200 flying swords. After thinking about it, he felt that even if he used all of them now, it would be useless. Even if he reached the middle stage of core formation, he wouldn't be able to fully unleash the power of 200 flying swords. It would already be very good if he could increase the power of 100 flying swords. Besides, if Chen Feng found out that he took something as good as the mysterious gold sand for himself, he would definitely nag him endlessly. It was better to leave some for him. With a wave of his hand, the 100 flying swords and mysterious gold sand nailed to the wall were all put away. Suddenly, his whole body trembled. Yu Qianqiu closed his eyes and let out a comfortable moan. Just like that, his cultivation broke through to the middle stage of core formation. It was simply too satisfying. Feeling refreshed, he walked out of the cave. His two subordinates at the cave entrance saluted in unison and said, "Leader! Where's your Chief Chen?" Yu Qianqiu asked with his hands behind his back. One of them replied, "Chief Chen is in the alchemy room." The former nodded and said, "Go do your own things. There's no need to watch over me." With that said, he walked away. When he passed by another cave entrance, he suddenly heard someone whispering, "Strange. Did you notice that the temperature of the earth fire has been very unstable these past 2 days? It seems like it's a bit low." Someone replied, "That's right. I also think it's strange." When a cauldron of pills reached a crucial point, the temperature suddenly dropped. In the end, we wasted an entire cauldron of pills. However, the temperature seems to be gradually recovering. Yu Qianqiu listened for a while outside and thought to himself, could it be that they're affected by my fire art? Regardless of whether it's true or not, it seems like I can't absorb fire elements in my own territory in the future. If I want to do it, I have to do it outside. Inside the alchemy room, Chen Feng was squatting in a pile of spiritual herbs, rummaging through something. Suddenly, a flying sword stabbed right in front of him, giving him a fright. At the side, Yu Qianqiu chuckled and said, "What do you think of this flying sword I refined?" Chen Feng, who had a slightly unhappy expression on his face, casually pulled out the sword from the ground. It wasn't that he looked down on his boss. Yu Qianqiu's pill refining skills were better than his, but in the path of tool refining, Yu Qianqiu wasn't as proficient as him. Chen Feng originally wanted to tactfully attack his boss, but who knew that after taking a look, he would be stunned. He held the sword in front of his eyes with both hands and examined it closely. He mumbled, "The sword's body is one, the blade is sharp, and the color is dark gold. Boss, this flying sword has already reached the grade of a high-grade magic tool. Did you really refine it?" Chen Feng turned around and expressed his doubt. Yu Qianqiu chuckled and called back the flying sword in his hand. Then, he casually threw a bag of things to him and said, "This is for you." Chen Feng caught it and opened it to take a look. Then he shook his head and said, "I say, so it's mixed with mystic gold sand. What a pity. It's such a waste to give something like this to you. Don't talk nonsense. We'll talk again when you can refine a sword better than this one." Yu Qianqiu couldn't be bothered with him and turned around to go back. A stream of light quickly flew out from the deep valley. Yu Qianqiu floated down to the top of Misty Peak. His cultivation had increased by 1 level, and in addition to the rebirth of the flying sword, the speed of the sword kinesis flight was indeed much faster. At this time, the sky outside was just beginning to brighten. Yu Qianqiu looked around and was instantly stunned. He saw Bai Suzhen standing on the cliff and looking at him. Smiling, he walked over and asked, "Why are you here?" Bai Suzhen smiled indifferently and turned back to look at the gradually fading stars in the sky. She said gently, "You stayed down there for more than a month. Previously, I saw you looking up at the stars every night. I thought it must be related to the stars, so I came to take a look." She naturally couldn't say that she saw him naked, so she thought of coming here to take a look. Yu Qianqiu took a few light steps forward and stood beside her. He smiled and said, "Sister is indeed smart. Not bad. I comprehended something from the changes in the starry sky. It's a pretty good incantation." "What incantation?" Bai Suzhen looked back and asked in surprise. Yu Qianqiu looked at her and took a few steps away. Suddenly, a raging fire burned around his body, illuminating the whole cliff. He, who was wrapped in the fire, casually took out an ordinary flying sword. The flying sword was wrapped in the raging fire and instantly turned into a ball of liquid, which fell to the ground and scattered. After the bewitching fire was restrained into his body, Yu Qianqiu shrugged disapprovingly, as if to tell her that it was this incantation. "What a powerful fire. I can feel its destructive power. I'm afraid that even with my cultivation, I will be burned by it. Brother is indeed a genius, to be able to comprehend such a powerful fire incantation from the changes in the starry sky." Bai Suzhen couldn't hide the admiration in her eyes. Since ancient times, who could create their own cultivation incantations was not a proud son of heaven. She was proud of him. Yu Qianqiu calmly accepted her praise. To be praised by such an outstanding woman was also a happy thing. He walked back to her side and looked at her with a smile. "Big sister, this incantation was created by me. It doesn't have a name yet. Big sister, please give it a name." "You want me to give it a name?" Bai Suzhen's tone revealed a hint of surprise. It should be known that the name of a newly created incantation was very likely to be passed down through the ages along with the name of the person who created the incantation, especially the more powerful incantation. It was rare for Yu Qianqiu to see her reveal such a little girl's expression. He nodded his head blankly. Bai Suzhen lowered her head and muttered to herself. She then raised her head to look at the already white night sky. Her gaze stopped on the most dazzling star for a while. She turned her head and smiled sweetly. "Star flame. Star as in stars, flame as in flames. What do you think about calling it star flame?" Yu Qianqiu's gaze also fell on the star. He nodded and said, "Star flame. All right, This fire incantation will be called Star Flame. The person who named it is Bai Suzhen. Chapter 235. After learning that he had stayed in the valley for more than a month, Yu Qianqiu went to inspect the troops. Seeing that the houses had been built and that the training was on track, he finally felt at ease. There was no need for him to worry about the other details. Otherwise, what was the point of having so many people? When he returned to the back garden of the Pillar of State General's residence, he realized that Shi Shaotian, Ling Feng, and the rest were not there. There were a few more mortals with spiritual roots in the garden, and he had recruited them into Utopia. When he walked past the entrance of the garden, he realized that there were many servants cleaning up the general's residence. There were lanterns and colored banners everywhere, and it looked very festive. "Mr. Yu," someone called out to him. Yu Qianqiu saw a smiling Shi Yutian running over and bowing. Yu Qianqiu pouted and said, "Is it going to be a festival? Or are you going to marry a concubine?" Shi Yutian felt awkward and smiled apologetically. "Yes, my father will be back tomorrow." "The Pillar of State General is coming back." Yu Qianqiu nodded and said, "Find me 10 sets of clothes for the servants, the ones I wore last time." The set that Shi Shaotian had given him had turned into ashes in the valley, so he had to get a few more sets as backup. Shi Yutian nodded repeatedly and trotted away. Not long after, he personally came back with 10 sets of clothes for the servants. Yu Qianqiu immediately changed his clothes in the garden and walked out of the back garden. Shi Yutian followed behind and said with a smile, "Mister, are you going out? Yutian is quite familiar with the capital. Do you want me to lead the way?" Just as he finished speaking, he saw the 2 beautiful wives of the Shi family blocking his way. The 2 ladies wanted to bow to Yu Qianqiu, but they were stopped by Yu Qianqiu. "There's no need to be so polite. When there are many people, I'm a servant of the general's residence." He then bowed to the 2 ladies instead. Si Tuhui tilted her body slightly. Although she did not know who he was, she did not dare to accept his courtesy. On the other hand, Bao Wanshi was not interested in him. She accepted his bow and complained to her husband, "Where are you going?" "Madam, I'm going out with Mr." He was looking forward to building a good relationship with Yu Qianqiu. Who would have thought that Yu Qianqiu, who was at the side, would laugh and say, "I'm going to 10,000 Flower Tower for a stroll. Do you really want to go?" After saying that, he directly walked out. He looked like he wasn't going to stop him. How could Bao Wanshi agree? Shi Yutian was immediately stopped by his wife, who would not let him go. Si Tuhui, who was at the side, smiled faintly. She looked at Yu Qianqiu, who was walking away, and shook her head gently. She did not believe that such a person would go to a dirty place like a brothel. He must have done it on purpose to anger her sister-in-law. This was just her wishful thinking. In fact, Yu Qianqiu really did go to a brothel. However, he didn't go to visit a prostitute. There were too many people in the capital. It was not convenient for him to fly around in the city during the day. If he wanted to leave the city directly, he would fly out. He took out some silver and ate snacks all the way to Myriad Flower Brothel. As soon as he arrived, someone naturally led him in. The winding path led to a secluded place. Behind Myriad Flower Brothel, there was a courtyard that was not small. Ordinary guests could not enter. Such a secluded place in the bustling capital was indeed suitable for living. This was the second time he came here. There was a faint sound of a zither in a small attic deep in the courtyard. Yu Qianqiu could tell that it was a song he taught. He shook his head and went up alone. As soon as he walked up to the attic, the sound of the zither stopped. The allure beauty shouted from inside, "Come in by yourself." After he pushed the door open and went in, he still bowed and greeted, "Mistress." This time, the allure beauty did not tease him like before. She leaned on the zither and rested her chin on her hand. She looked at him and sighed. "Ong Kwangtsung and Daluo sect are really unlucky to have provoked you. Especially Ong Kwangtsung. Now, he can be considered to have been removed from the cultivation world. This is all thanks to Mistress Information. You've been a great help," Yu Qianqiu said respectfully. The allure beauty giggled and lazily leaned back on the chair. She shook her head and said, "Yu Qianqiu, you're really good at scheming. First, You looted the spirit stone mines of the two great sects and killed all the disciples in the mines. Then, you lured Ong Kwang-tsung to send people to guard the mines again. When Ong Kwang-tsung's sect was at its weakest, you led people to attack Ong Kwang-tsung again. In the end, you took down Ong Kwang-tsung in one fell swoop. Yu Qianqiu was stunned. He scratched his head and said, "Mistress, what do you mean by this? Why don't I understand? When did I attack Ong Kwang-tsung?" "Keep pretending. Keep pretending." The Allure Beauty sneered and said, "Don't tell me that the hero's men aren't your men. I admit that the hero is my men, but I only looted the 21 spirit stone mines." "Mistress, you're saying that someone attacked Ong Kwang-tsung?" Yu Qianqiu was stunned. "You didn't do it?" The Allure Beauty was puzzled. Yu Qianqiu smiled bitterly and said, "Mistress, I did it. Is there a need to hide it from you? I did the spirit stone mines, but I really didn't attack Ong Kwang-tsung. Mistress, what's going on? Quickly tell me." The Allure Beauty couldn't laugh anymore. She stood up and sized up Yu Qianqiu. Seeing that he didn't seem to be lying, she muttered, "If you didn't do it, then this matter is a little fishy." Her graceful figure circled around the zither platform. She thought for a moment and said, "Half a month ago, not long after Ong Kwang-tsung sent people to guard the 6 spirit stone mines, a group of powerful black-clothed masked people suddenly attacked Mount Qingguang. Ong Kwang-tsung's Tribulation passing stage Qing Nu and ancestor Qing Fu died in battle. Other than the disciples outside, almost everyone else died. Afterwards, someone left a small black flag in Ong Kwang-tsung. On it, there were 2 golden words, hero. I originally thought that it was you. But now that I think about it, I'm afraid that the person behind this matter isn't so simple." "What?" Yu Qianqiu squinted his eyes. He pinched his chin and said in a deep voice, "In other words, someone did his own thing, but poured dirty water on the hero's banner. Master's wife, who do you think would do such a thing?" "I can't guess." The 100-charm beauty frowned and said, "I originally thought that it was you. So I didn't urge my subordinates to investigate this matter." "Then I'll have to ask Master's wife to investigate." Yu Qianqiu sneered and said, "How could it be so easy to frame me? Some people are tired of living." There was still one thing he didn't say. He was worried that he couldn't find someone to test the power of his star flame fire technique. The 100-charm beauty heard the trace of coldness in his words. She nodded to him and said, "Don't worry. My 10,000 flower houses information channels are everywhere. As long as you didn't do it, even if we can't thoroughly investigate it, we will still find some clues. Unless he fell from the sky and disappeared on the ground, that's more likely." How could Yu Qianqiu not understand the meaning in her words? This "fell from the sky and disappeared on the ground" was probably referring to what his group had done last time. She probably also investigated it. Unfortunately, his group was really similar to falling from the sky and disappearing on the ground. He smiled and said, "How long do you think it will take for Master's wife to find some clues? When it comes to investigating information, if my 10,000 flower house is second, I'm afraid no one can be first. 3 days. 3 days is enough. Come back after 3 days." The 100-charm beauty was obviously very confident in her ability to investigate information. Otherwise, she wouldn't have said such words. She said with a charming smile, "After I give you the information, I'll leave it to you to deal with it. I want to see who is more powerful, the real hero or the fake hero." Chapter 236. Yu Qianqiu gave a non-committal smile and didn't make any comments. According to his own estimation, maybe the fake hero was more powerful than the real one. He admitted that he didn't have an expert who could kill 2 crossing tribulation final stage cultivators at once. Although Bai Suzhen was also at the crossing tribulation final stage, it was hard to say if she could defeat 2 at once. Moreover, Ong Kwang-tsung definitely had other crossing tribulation final stage experts. Otherwise, he would have already gone to Qingguang Mountain to find trouble with Ong Kwang-tsung. Master's wife, during this time, did anything new happen in the cultivation world? Yu Qianqiu naturally wouldn't let a master's wife who was familiar with the cultivation world go to waste. Nothing new, but there is an old thing. The new talent assembly that is held once every 10 years will be held at Supporting Immortals Island in 6 days. This year, Ong Kwangtsung will definitely be absent. AI. It's a pity that you have already been expelled from supporting Immortals Island. Otherwise, you would also be able to witness this grand occasion. The 100 Charm Beauty teased. It's a bit of a pity. Yu Qianqiu shook his head in agreement. He thought to himself, how do you know that I won't be able to witness this grand occasion? As long as I want to go to supporting Immortals Island, I can go at any time. However, these words naturally couldn't be said out loud. The news of the Pillar of the State General returning to the capital with 10,000 guards had already spread throughout the capital. It was said that His Majesty the Emperor would personally come out of the city to welcome them. The common people naturally didn't want to give up on this opportunity. To be able to see His Majesty the Pillar of the State General was a rare thing. Therefore, the streets were filled with people. Yu Qianqiu was normally a person who liked crowds. Naturally, he also wanted to join in on the fun. However, this time, because His Majesty the Emperor would personally come out of the city to welcome them, the number of people that could go out to welcome them was limited. Therefore, Shi Yutian, who was in charge of this stall, personally arranged for him to be part of the welcoming team. Lady Li, 2 sons, 2 daughters-in-law, these were the family members. The housekeeper and 4 servants were just in accordance with the rule that a master couldn't have more than 1 servant. Among the servants, there were 3 maidservants. Only the housekeeper and Yu Qianqiu were male. Naturally, it was to make it easier for them to serve their mistress. At the west gate of the capital, the Shi family's master and servant had already arrived at the city gate. Although it was early in the morning, the sun was still quite fierce. Fortunately, they were at the west gate, so the sun wouldn't reach them for a while. Everyone could hide under the tall city walls. As for the top of the city gate tower, His Majesty was up there. The main road out of the city was guarded by layers of majestic imperial guards, not allowing anyone to get close. The family members of the Pillar of the State General were the only exceptions and were allowed to leave the city. Yu Qianqiu looked up from time to time from the city wall. He had never seen what the legendary emperor looked like, and he really wanted to see it. Little Tian, that old man in yellow on the city wall is the emperor? Yu Qianqiu suddenly saw a guy in yellow robes appear on the city wall. He seemed to be very powerful, so he pulled Shi Xiaotian aside and asked. As soon as he said this, everyone's expression changed. Li Hongyang's expression was a bit awkward, but she didn't know what to say. Shi Yutian hurriedly looked at the imperial guards over there. They were quite far away, so he didn't think they could hear him. He then wiped the cold sweat off his forehead. Bao Wanshi, on the other hand, was a bit dumbfounded. Someone actually dared to talk about His Majesty like that? Si Tuhui's eyes also flickered. The housekeeper lowered his head, and the 3 maidservants were a bit scared. They didn't know why this new servant was so daring. Not only did he call their master's name, he even dared to look down on His Majesty. Shi Xiaotian didn't raise his head, but smiled bitterly and said, "Boss, can you not do this? You've already crossed the line. According to the law, you will be beheaded." Those who could come here to greet them were all the Shi family's trusted subordinates. Yu Qianqiu didn't care about what he said. He said disdainfully, "Behead me? You can ask him to try. If he gets angry, I will kick him down from the city gate tower right now." Hearing this, everyone was terrified. If these words were to spread, what would happen? Shi Xiaotian almost begged. "Boss, lower your voice. The emperor is protected by the imperial preceptor. The imperial preceptor isn't an ordinary person. He has a high cultivation." Yu Qianqiu was slightly stunned. He remembered something. It seemed that before Bai Suzhen was imprisoned in Ong Kwangtsung, she had fought with her imperial preceptor. Thinking about this, he really restrained himself a little. About an hour later, there was movement on the city gate tower. Not long after, a group of civil and military officials escorted a yellow-robed elder out of the city gate. As a family member, she couldn't go to the main road to greet them. She could only follow from the side protected by the imperial guards. As if it was rehearsed, everyone immediately felt a buzzing vibration under their feet. Following that, the neighing of war horses came from afar. When a banner could be seen fluttering in the distance, a general in silver armor had already leaped up the slope. Immediately, a row of generals in battle armor followed behind him. Suddenly, a black mass of cavalry appeared behind them, and with a rumble, they followed the general in front. If this group of people didn't stop and directly charged over, what would the situation be like? The momentum of the tens of thousands of horses galloping over was astonishing. Even the ground over here was trembling. Yu Qianqiu sized up the civil and military officials on the main road. Many of their faces had already changed. It was obvious that they were frightened. Looking at the Shi family's side, they were all pleasantly surprised. It was the joy of seeing the master of the family, and a very powerful one at that. Yu Qianqiu shook his head and sighed softly. Sigh. I only said a few words and people said I was overstepping my authority. Great General Shi made such a big commotion. Doesn't he know that the emperor is here to greet him? Is he putting on a show to scare the emperor, or is he here to attack the capital? Although his voice was soft, it was enough for the few masters in front to hear. It was unknown whether he was speaking to himself or to others. The Shi family's family members trembled when they heard this. They all turned to look at the main road's emperor. They saw an elder with a sword on his back, who was originally behind the emperor, take a step forward and stand next to the emperor. It seemed like he was protecting the emperor. This time, the Shi family couldn't be happy. It was obvious that they had really frightened the emperor. Yu Qianqiu only saw it now. When he saw that person's clothing, he was stunned. Wasn't that the clothing of Fuxian Island? He couldn't help but ask, who is that old man with the sword on his back? He is the current imperial preceptor. Shi Yutian sighed. After being pointed out by Yu Qianqiu, he could also see that his father was a little rash today. Yu Qianqiu nodded silently. No wonder the Li family's dynasty was supported by Fuxian Island. It was indeed so. The silver-armored general at the front suddenly raised his hand and waved when he was about 100 meters away from the welcoming guards. The dense mass of cavalry behind him abruptly reined in their horses and stopped abruptly. It was truly an order that was strictly enforced. The general also slowed down. He rode his horse to a stop about 10 meters away from the guards of honor. He jumped off his horse and threw the reins. There was already someone running over to hold the horse for him. The state pillar general strode in front of the emperor and knelt on one knee. He said, "Subject Shi Wenguang greets your majesty." When he knelt, the army 100 meters away also got off their horses and knelt together. "Long live your majesty." The shouts shook the sky. Just this formation made the blood of those watching feel a little hot. They were indeed an elite army that had been on the battlefield for a long time. At this moment, the old emperor finally smiled. He waved his hand and signaled for all the soldiers to rise. The imperial preceptor beside him said loudly, "His Majesty has an order. Rise." His voice was louder than a loudspeaker. It immediately showed the imperial preceptor's ability. After that, there was a scene of love between the emperor and his subjects. Yu Qianqiu wasn't interested in that. What he cared about was how deep the imperial preceptor's cultivation was. However, it was clearly higher than his because he couldn't see through it. In the end, the general's 10,000 guards set up camp outside the city. The general himself received the honor of being in the same carriage as the emperor. He went directly to the palace and the palace prepared a banquet for him. The great general's family only had a quick meeting with him, which was considered a greeting. To Yu Qianqiu, he was just here to watch the show. When he came back, he would do what he had to do. He planned to stay for a few days and wait for the 100 Charms beauty to get news about the fake hero. Then, he would go to Fuxian Island to see if he could see the new talent assembly that was held once every 10 years. After 2 days, Yu Qianqiu wanted to find the 100 Charms beauty. However, he saw Shi Xiaotian walking in with an unhappy expression. He couldn't help but ask, "What happened?" Shi Xiaotian shook his head and said, "It's nothing. Today, during the morning court, someone criticized my father. He said that my father has an army and often follows him. He wants His Majesty to take back my father's military power." Yu Qianqiu smiled and took over the topic. Then, the old emperor rejected that person's criticism and reprimanded him. He even praised your father. Shi Xiaotian was stunned. "Who told you that?" "It just happened not long ago. My big brother told me when he came back." "How did you know?" "Damn! I've seen too many TV dramas in my previous life." Yu Qianqiu put on an unfathomable expression and smiled. "I don't need anyone to tell me. I guessed it the moment you said it." Then, he walked around the hall with his hands behind his back and sighed. "If I'm not wrong, this is just the beginning. There will still be people who will continue to criticize your father. Sigh. Looks like your Sure family has reached a point of life and death. His words were too alarmist. Sure Xiaotian was shocked. His expression twitched. Boss, you must be joking. A general who can command millions of people can't be stupid. Yu Qianqiu patted his shoulder and sighed. Help me send a message to your father. I believe he will understand. What message? Seeing that his boss didn't seem to be joking, he became nervous. Peace is decided by the general. He is not allowed to see peace. Yu Qianqiu sighed. Tell your father. He will naturally know what it means. I'm going out to do something. Then he wobbled out. As he walked, he shook his head and said, It's all because of military power. You're tuning in to the Xueqi's Martial Arts Saga YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.